Welcome back, Counter-Strike fans, Asian Counter-Strike fans, to another episode of Geographically Challenged, our second one done here from the hotel, joined by yours truly on the Cuck couch in Hangzhou, China. We did one just before Elimination Stage.
Yep.
And now we have, three days out from the start of the playoffs at the time of recording.
Yes.
Probably 2 days at the time of release?
Yeah, probably coming out tomorrow. It is 10 o'clock local time. What day is it today? I can't this is the thing about working these events. It's
the 9th.
It's Monday the 9th, 10 p.m. So yeah, probably won't come out until the 10th.
We just finished a grueling day of work.
Yeah.
So if energy's low.
Energy is low. But, we're here. We're here to grind it out.
Exactly.
For the fans, for the viewers. They love the Asian Counter-Strike. And actually, there's a few interesting things to talk about that are not related to the major as well. So we'll get to them at the end. But before we go too in-depth into the CS discussion, as is the Counter-Strike podcast meta, you don't talk about Counter-Strike for a little bit. Mm-hmm. We had a fan on the last episode, Neo, and he really wanted to hear a story. He even wanted to hear a story so much that he donated $5 to the podcast. So this is for you, Noobage. We want to hear the Hag story from Neo.
Okay, as a side note, I'm expecting on our day off, you're getting me a coffee or a beer or something. I mean, £5 will be a beer or coffee here,
Sure.
So that works out. Right.
This guy's a hustler.
Many of you probably have heard this from Richard Lewis's side. That video did incredibly well on Richard Lewis's channel. I had tons of people messaging me about this, being like, is this true? Because he says in the video, go and ask Neo, I'm not lying here. And as he said in the video, as he said to me in real life, that's one of his top 3 stories he's had in esports, which, considering this guy is one of the GOATs, he's been around for, probably at least maybe 15, 20 years. He did tell me when he started, but it's a long time, basically.
Yeah.
He's been around esports for a hell of a long time. So the fact that it's a potential top 3 is
You're onto something
sick.
good.
Yeah. So this all started in October of this year in Espoo, Finland. Myself, Richard, Thorin, Anders, Maui, we were all out there, and obviously Veracity as well was hosting. We were all out there for the Elisa Masters Espoo. It's generally an event which is a tier 1.5 sort of event, but it was a pretty stacked cast, right? In terms of, we had Anders on the cast alongside me, which is pretty sick. I've obviously done all the online stuff at Espoo, so I was sort of one of the kind of reoccurring faces there. And the desk, that desk, I hadn't worked together since 2021. So cool event, right? That in itself was sick. And that's something else I can talk about at a later time. But this happened on day 2. So most evenings, we'd finish not too late, maybe 9, 10 p.m. It wouldn't be that bad. And our call time wasn't until 2 or 3 p.m. the next day. So we would kind of chill out. Now, generally speaking, I'm by far the youngest in this kind of cohort, essentially.
Little TikTok brain rot zoomer, as I've realized at this event.
And most events I go to, I am generally the youngest. I think the only person who works at the top level who's younger than me is Dinko, and he's about 6 months younger than me. But generally speaking, I'm 24 for context. So most events I work to, I am one of the youngest people.
Yeah.
So at this event, most people afterwards, Richard always want to grab a drink, just a beer or a whiskey, just chill out, have a conversation, just wind down, right? I think it's always nice, especially when you work long days.
Yes.
Especially long days in front of a crowd.
Yes.
Because, Espoo was pretty packed. I mean, it was more or less sold out, 4 or 5K, whatever. It's pretty long days. So you kind of want to just be able to wind down, just chill out, then go to bed, not have to wake up too early the next day, go about your thing. Right. So day 1, we had a drink. It was after rehearsals, had a drink at the hotel. Super chill. And everyone was sort of there for at least some part of it. Day 2, which is the first day of the show, most people were I'm just going to go to bed. Credit, fair play. Maui was, he's pretty jet lagged still because he's flown from America. And then, Duncan and Anders were just I'm just going to go to bed, right? So Richard was I want to go have a drink. No one else joined him. I was like, oh, mate, I'll join you. Why not? I'm happy to grab a whiskey. I'm pretty new to whiskey as well. I used to hate it until really recently.
Right.
And
it's a refined taste. You have to spend 6 months or so drinking whiskey before you really start to like it. Yeah.
And Richard was kind of teaching me as well, so it was quite nice.
Take some on ice first for anyone that's not had it.
So
take it on ice first, and it takes away some of the bite, and then you can get into it a bit.
So he was teaching me about it. It was actually quite interesting to learn about the history and how people invest into whiskey,
right.
whatever. Anyway, so we try to go back to the hotel bar, and I think it's a weekday, so we try to go back and it's closed. I'm like, oh shit, like where do we go? Because Espoo is like a small sub-town about 15 minutes outside of Helsinki, the capital. So we're not going to take a tube or a cab anywhere. No. So we look walking distance, and there's a bar, there's a sports bar. So we're like, yeah, fuck it, let's go to the sports bar. Open until like 2 a.m. That's perfect. You know, we're not going large. We're just going for a little bit of a chill out, and it's about a 20-minute walk away. Not too bad. Anyway, so we go there. Me and Richard sit down, grab a pint each, chill out, and maybe have like I think another whiskey off the back of that. Either way, really light night. So it gets to about 1:30 a.m. maybe is how what I'll estimate. I wasn't really checking the time.
Yeah,
we're having a great kind of back and forth. We've been talking for a good like hour and a half. Like first of all, like Richard is probably of everyone I've met, maybe ever, I think the number one person just to sit down and just like let him talk. Like,
I've never met him, but I reckon he's a good yap.
He is just incredible. Like so, like the stories he's got are just incredible. I also think like he's an incredible storyteller. As anybody who watched Richard's streams or YouTube will know, like if you give him a topic and he starts talking about it, like he's naturally probably one of the funniest people I've met, and he's got a lot to give. So an incredible person just to sit down and listen to. And that's what I was doing. I was just like, you know, tell me about E-League or tell me about your time in Las Vegas or whatever, you know, these cool events that he's worked in the past. And that's cool. So we're kind of shooting the shit. I have a few of my like tier 2 stories, which aren't that, you know, nowhere near as cool as his. So at this bar, we're chilling. Anyway, so I'm sitting facing Richard. We're at a little table of 4 on opposite sides. I'm sitting here. We've got a wall to our right and the bar's to the left. And I see over sort of his shoulder, diagonally left, there's like a high-seated table. And there's like 3 people there that are all sat on it, but like kind of not talking to each other, but they just sort of sat there with their own drinks. And there's this lady, and to put it nicely, you know, she's obviously, she's older, you know, probably like 40 to 50, and definitely had a fair share of alcohol and cigs in her life. You know, you can kind of tell.
She's a bit rough.
Face, rough around the edges. We'll put it that way. So she comes, I see her like, for no joke, probably about a good 15 minutes. Richard had been telling the end of quite a long story or whatever it was. I think it actually might have been Shaquille O'Neal on E-League, but they were doing like a fighting event, and he was asking for Thorin. He was like, because Thorin had called him out.
He wanted to fight him,
yeah. And he was telling me the story about that. Hilarious.
That is probably if I'm being honest, that clip is probably the top 1 esports clip of all time.
Yeah, I mean, it's Shaquille O'Neal asking to fight Thorin.
He's like, how about a running race?
It's insane. And like, Richard's trying to say like, he doesn't work fighting game. He doesn't work Tekken. This is Tekken. He works Counter-Strike, different event, whatever. So I think he was telling me then that story. I start telling him one of my stories, you know, whatever. So about 15 minutes, this lady just looking at Richard, not even at me, at Richard. And after about 15, 20 minutes, she comes over, and she kind of just comes to the end of the table and is like, hey, are you guys English? And then I say, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into the, you know, the longevity of, I was born in South Africa, but you know what I mean? I was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's a Finnish lady. And then Richard's like, well, I'm British. I'm Welsh. I'm not English, but British. Sure. You know what I mean? Like, let's just let it, you know, just to
let a sleeping dog die.
Ease the conversation. Let's not start. So she's like, do you mind if I just sit down at the end of the table? So like kind of pulls up a chair. Do you mind if I just sit down and just listen? Like, please carry on telling your story. I'm not going to involve. I just like listening to English people talk. And then I can already see Richard like, Welsh, but and then we're just like, like I guess, all right. So she sits down at the end of our table, and I tell the end of my story, and you know I only had like maybe 5 minutes left tops,
right?
But obviously, if someone's sitting at the table, you can't just like not really include her. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even though she said, "Oh, don't include me, I just want to listen." Yeah, she was obviously like wanted to be involved in some way. Yep. So as I'm telling my story, Richard texts me on WhatsApp. And then is like, oh, I think this lady fancies you. And now, I knew it wasn't true. Well, I assumed it wasn't true because she's been staring at Richard for the last
I mean, it could be Richard. She could be on the prowl, mate.
Yeah, exactly. She's been staring at Richard for the last like 15 minutes. She didn't look at me. And then, like, I'm telling the story, and I can see my phone on the table, like, buzzing with Richard's name coming up. So I look at it while I'm telling the story, and it just says, like, oh, I think she fancies you, or she's trying to steal your organs, like, one of the two. And I was like, all right. Yep. So I'm, like, trying not to laugh as I finish the story. I think she clocked as well, because I'm, like, you know, pretty bad at hiding it. And then, anyway, I finished my story, and then Richard's obviously a super super lovely dude. For those who haven't met him, really really kind in person to anybody he meets, whether it's a fan or a random or whatever. And he says, "Oh, so are you from here?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm from Espoo." And he's like, "Do you come here regularly?" And she's like, "Yeah, all the time." And we're definitely both thinking, like, fuck it, I can tell. You know what I mean?
Fucking oath, cunt. Like, fucking oath.
I can tell. So then we're like, I can't remember exactly how we got to it, but then she had said something like about how I look in terms of my age, right? I can't remember exactly what it is. And then I think Richard said to her, like, oh, like he, guess how old he is, all right, or something. And she didn't guess. And then he was like, oh, he's 24. And then she was like, whoa, like 24, whatever. And then she was like, and I can't remember exactly if it was in a good way or a bad way. I'm assuming she probably thought I looked older. As fucking everybody in China does. Everybody thinks I look about 30 here.
It's the facial hair.
Yeah, people, like, just for context, people are shocked. Like, when we told our talent manager I'm 24, like, I thought she nearly, like,
really?
keeled over. She's like, what? Like, it's like, fucking, all right, relax. Like, anyway. So then, as you kind of do, I don't know about Oz or wherever you guys are from, but in England, like, as a kind of, like, a kind thing you say to somebody is, like, you don't look a day over 28, you know what I mean? That kind of vibe, right? Yeah. So I say to her, she says something about like guessing her age.
It's always dangerous, man.
Yeah.
You can't do it with women.
Exactly. And I wasn't going to actually guess. And I was
just
like,
got to say, oh, you look 20.
Like, oh, love, you don't look a day over 28. You look double that easily. But I was like, oh, you don't look a day over 28. And it was like, a really nice flowing conversation. I was like, oh, you don't look a day over 28. And then she was like, don't fucking do that. And me and Richard are like,
what?
Like on a fucking dime, it changed. Like it went from like super nice, laughy, don't fucking do it, stares at me. And I'm like, and then Richard instantly was like, whoa, like we all like kind of backed off, right? And then he was like, don't look a day over 35. And then she looked at him and was like, don't fucking do that. And I was like, is she gonna fucking fight us? I was like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on here? Like, instantly changed. Then we were like, oh, okay, like...
What does she mean, though?
Yeah, we were like, I don't know, we're like, okay,
Like, was she offended that you called her younger?
Exactly. I was trying to be nice, right? And we both instantly felt the hostilities. You're like, oh, okay, we'll move on from that. And then, depending on how you word it, we got sort of saved by the bell in a way, which you'll realize why I say in a way in a moment, because this other guy that was sitting at the high-seated table, was like three of them there. The other guy who they weren't speaking to each other beforehand comes over and is like, hey, do you mind if I join you? I remember Richard saying, fucking,
like,
you
may
as well.
Fuck off. Like, please just fuck off.
No, he was like, I mean, at this point, like, you may as well. Like, we've already got one. What's another one, to the conversation? Anyway, so he sits next to me. This lady's next to Richard. And sort of like the way it's going is I'm speaking to him. I was like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Neo. And he said whatever his name was. And then Richard and the lady are sort of speaking. And then he was asking me like, after a while, like, we're talking, I'm from England, I'm here for work, whatever. And he was telling me like, oh, he lives in Espoo and he drinks here all the time. Again, no surprises. The guy was absolutely leathered. He was hammered. Credit to him speaking in a second language, but like he was slurring through them words. You know what I mean? He was hammered. And anyway, so we're sitting at this table. And he's like, oh, where you from? Like, where's your accent from? And I'm like, oh, I'm from England, but I've lived sort of all around. So I've got a bit of a mixture of an accent. I've lived up north and I've lived in London. He's like, oh, like whereabouts up north? And I was like, Liverpool? He was like, oh, I used to go to Blackpool, which is like north of Liverpool. And it's like a weirdly small and like horrible town. I would actually say like probably one of the worst places to go in England. Like top 5 easily, right? Terrible area, rampant crime. It's awful, right? And it's just the ugliest place ever. I was like, why have you been to Blackpool? Like, that is crazy.
Yeah, of all places.
Yeah, like, what the fuck have you been to Blackpool? And he was like, oh, I used to go to, like, punk rock concerts there. And I used to go, like, every year. And I was like, oh, man, that's awesome. My family used to listen to punk and stuff like that or whatever, just trying to get on the same basis with him. And he's like, oh, so yeah, because he was like, your accent sort of sounds like London. And he goes to Richard, he was like, where are you from? And he's like, oh, well, I'm Welsh, but I grew up in the north of England. And he was like, no, that's not it. And for, Richard has an extremely, like, common, I would say, like, just general term northern accent.
Yeah.
Essentially. It's not London, just northern. So anybody who's been to England would be like, that's a Northern England accent,
Right,
pretty simply.
right.
Like, it's not Welsh sounding, it's just Northern English. As like a sort of generalization. So he's like, no, he's like, I grew up in Wales, but, I lived in north of England for most of my life. So Northern England. And he's like, nah, that's not it. And then Richard's like, no.
Pretty sure it is.
Yeah, like, I'm from north of England. He's like, nah, that's not it. He was like, Richard was like, I lived in America for 6 years. He's like, that's it. You know what?
It's not.
I hate. Yeah,
For what it's worth.
He was like, that's it. He's like, I hate that. And then Richard's like, you hate what? He's like, I hate fucking frauds. And like, just to Richard's face. And I'm like, I'm gobsmacked.
What are these people on? These guys are just fucking cooked.
I'm like, I like can't speak. I'm like, what? I see Richard like instantly like, he's like in his head like, he's calling that, of all people to call a fraud, Richard is the number one person he's supposed. You just don't call that because he is
fraud.
not. Yeah. So he like calls Richard. You're like, I hate that. You're a fraud. And Richard's like, I am not a fraud. He's like, no, like, he calls him a fucking fraud. He's like, no, you're a soft fraud. And then Richard's like,
even mean, bro?
Richard's like, I'm not a fraud. And he was like, right, mate. Obviously, this guy was drunk, right? So he's like. And he's like, yeah, like, so Richard's got a tattoo on his arm. And he's like, yeah, see, your accent and the tattoo, you're a fucking fraud. You're a soft fucking fraud. And then at this point, obviously, Richard is quite annoyed with this guy. But like, fuck you. Like, who are you?
You've chosen to come sit down and talk to us. Like,
exactly. You've just sat down and you just like, literally, because in this entire, like, he'd been here all of 5 minutes tops. He hasn't spoken to Richard apart from saying hello and can I sit down? And the first thing he says to him is just like insults him. So like Richard's obviously like, what the fuck? Like, so Richard says to him like, all right, mate, like, I think it's time to go, right?
Yeah.
At this point as well, just for context, the woman had got up to go to the toilet.
yeah.
So it's just us three, which is when he then asked Richard, where's your accent from? So the woman's not here at this point. So he's like, all right, mate, it's time to leave, please. I'm here with my friend and I just want to have a conversation with him. We're having a great time until you turned up. So could you please take your drink and leave? And he's like, no. And then Richard's like, yeah, like, it's time to go, mate. And then he just won't leave, right? He's like protesting this, saying, no, like, not like a fucking fraud, like a soft fraud. And it's like, Richard's like, mate, I'm gonna say it one more time, like, fuck off. And he's like, and then this guy's like, no, and he's just not coming across. And then Richard's like, I'm laughing the whole time, because I'm just like, and one of those guys like in like intense situations or whatever, I'm just fucking creasing. So I'm like kind of just dying at this whole point. But obviously it's quite serious.
You're expecting to see Hell in the Cell version 2.
Yeah. And then Richard says to him like, mate, if you don't leave, I'm going to fucking wrap this chair around your head. Right? Which, first of all, there's no way that guy understood like fucking wrap this chair around your head. He had no clue what that meant, but I'm dying. And then eventually there's a fucking security guard about 5 meters away from us. And Richard is facing this guy. This guy's got his back, he's behind the sort of drunk guy. And then Richard's like, mate, fucking hell, like, can you do your job, please? He's just sat there on his phone the whole night. This guy's accosting us, right? He's like, you've got this fucking guy accosting us, this drunk moron, like, at our table. Like, can you fucking, like, do your job, please? Like, fucking hell, like, do something. Just sat at the door on your phone, just scrolling Instagram or whatever. And he comes over and he's like, what? I'm like, do your fucking job. Like, take this guy away. He's like, for refusing to leave. He's like insulting Richard. It's just like it's a wild case. Eventually, the security guard takes him away, and it essentially sort of seems like this guy's a regular, and the security guard's just used to it, right?
Yeah.
So it takes him away, but we're like the only people in this bar, essentially. And Richard had told me before going out, he was like, yeah, man, whenever I go anywhere, like, I don't know why, I just attract weirdos. Like, I don't know what it is, but weirdos just come to me, and I always end up having some weird story. He told me this like hours before, and then when this guy comes over and after he's like sort of gets dragged away, he was like, I told you, like, weirdos always come to me. I don't know what it is. I'm a magnet for the weirdos. And I'm like kind of fucking laughing. And then so he gets taken away eventually. We're the only people in this bar, and we're like, we just want to come for a drink, and we get accosted by this random guy. The lady comes back from the toilet, and then Rich is like, hey, madam, thank you for your time. See you later. And then she's like, what? He's like, I'm going to ask you and your friend. I've already asked your friend nicely and not so nicely to leave. I want to ask you nicely, please, can you just leave us alone? I want to have a drink with my friend. We're having a great time. You know, shoot
Not
the
an
shit.
unreasonable request.
It was like, super nice to this lady. And then she's like, no, like, I don't even know him. And Richard's like, sorry, love, like, our patience is one thing. I don't care. Like, can you just leave us alone? I just want to have a talk with my friend. I don't want to have to, baby you through this conversation of like getting to know you because I don't care. Just leave us alone. Yeah. I want to just chill with my friend. She's like, no. Like, I don't know him. And Richard's like, love, I don't care. Like, just leave us alone. She just refuses to leave us alone. Same way the guy refuses to leave us alone.
Literally the worst kind of person.
And we're like, fucking hell, man. So I'm like, Richard, man, like, fuck it, let's just go. It's like 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
We got a call time like 2 p.m. or whatever. So we're going to get up, get lunch in the morning. So we're like, okay, let's just fucking go, right? So I'm like, Richard, let's go for a piss. I've finished my beer. I'm going to go for a piss and let's just go. Let's call it. So I go for a piss, and I can hear from the cubicle. I'm laughing. I can hear from the cubicle Richard be like, mate, fuck off. Leave me the fuck alone. Go away. Because the guy had come back. And the lady wasn't leaving either. She's like, no, I don't know him. And matey over there is like, I wasn't even like, oh, you're just a soft fraud. And I'm like, I can hear this all from the toilet. And Richard's like, mate, fucking leave me alone.
I need any clarification here because I think this is an important part of the story.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but when I go out and I'm drinking and I'm pissing in the urinal, there's just like this fucking like aura of being sort of slightly inebriated, trying to piss in the fucking urinal, and you're like swaying.
Yeah. I'm like,
that's what I'm trying to get into that mindset. You know what I mean?
I'm like,
where you're just a bit cooked, you're just a bit out of it, but you're hearing this on the fucking backside.
I was like a little tipsy. I had like a few beers and a couple of whiskeys or whatever, and like. I'm like swaying a little bit, giggling my fucking ass off.
Yeah. We've all been there.
I can just hear, mate, fucking fuck off, leave me alone. Like anyway, I come back out, get my coat, and we're like, fuck it, let's just go, man. We'll come back another time, whatever. And then so we leave this bar, and we walk out the bar, and we walk about 10 to 15 sort of steps, and then we just hear this like shriek behind us, and I'm like.
No.
The fuck is that? And then like it's like, wait. I'm like,
no.
And it's the lady following us. She's like, no, wait, I don't know him. And Richard's like, love, I don't care. We're going home. Just leave us alone. Just please go away. Like, leave us alone. We don't need this. Whatever. She's like, no, wait, guys, wait. And this is where Richard's like, mate, she's here for your organs, fella.
What else do you do in this situation?
Like, do not slow down, Nao. She's here for your organs. And I'm looking back at it like the whole time.
Run.
She's like, wait, I don't know him. And Richard's like, I don't care. We are going home. Goodbye. Stop following us. And she just keeps for like 10 minutes.
Fucking hell.
And then Richard like pretends to call the police. He's like, I'm calling the police if you don't leave us alone. And then she's like, wait. And I'm like, oh my God. So Richard pretends to be speaking to me. He's like, hello, Finnish police? Hi, yeah. I'm being followed by this lady. Me and my friend are being followed. She won't leave us alone. And just for us, like, because I know, we don't know, I think in Finland, I'm not sure if it's open carry, but I think you can own guns. So we were already like, oh, what the fuck? Like this drunk lady. And she had like a hand in a bag. And we were like, oh, I don't know. Let's just not fucking risk this. You know what I mean? Don't know what the fuck she's doing.
Yeah, especially these days, man. Like,
yeah, exactly. Let's just play it safe, right? So we're walking like 10 minutes. She follows, no joke, for about 10 to 15 minutes. It's about a 20-minute walk home. About 10 to 15 minutes. And we get to, there's a mall. Everything's closed in the mall. And this bar's on the back end of it, and our hotel's on the other end of it. And there's a mall and a tube station, essentially, both of which are closed, but the door's open, so you could like walk through it. And I said to Richard, I was like, honestly, mate, let's go through the mall, because there's cameras and it's all lit up. Because she was following us on a dark road.
Yeah.
And we were like, at least in here, I think with the lights on, the cameras, I don't think she'll follow us because it's all lit up.
Yeah.
And all the cameras are on. But it was dark outside, so she, no way you can see who she was. So we go inside and we run, kind of like jogging a little bit, and we're like laughing, like, what the fuck is going on? We're getting followed by this lady. Like, she's like speeding up as well. Like, she's sort of getting like a light jog on, and we're like, what the fuck? Like, like, what is going on? So we dip into this mall, and I see her. We get on like an escalator down, and I turn around just as we get on, and I see her walk up to the door, open it, and then she just stops. And then, I'm assuming because of the lights or something,
right?
She turns around and leaves. And I was like, fucking hell. But then we weren't 100% sure she was following us. Like every 2 seconds, like walking through this mall, like checking over our shoulder. And we get back to the hotel, and we say to the barman's like, you right, guys? Like, it's not the barman. The doorman, like the late night receptionist guy, just working at night. It's like 1:45, and he's like,
concierge.
Yeah, concierge. He's like, right, guys, you had a good night? And Richard's like, fucking, actually, no, mate, actually. And so we tell him the story, and he's like, oh my God, like, I'm so sorry. Like, and then we said, yeah. So he was like, if this shriveled hag of a lady walks in the lobby, don't let her in. She's coming here to kill us. Like. We're like, what the fuck is going on? And then we buy like a sandwich and some noodles from like the late night whatever, and he just lets us have them. He's like, oh, I'm sorry about this. Like, really sorry. Just take them. You know what I mean? Like, enjoy. And then we're kind of laughing. We know the worst of it's over. And then it became dubbed the Sea Hag's Lair was the bar because because we were scared of the sea hag.
I think I saw the video that he recorded. I didn't watch it though because I was like, "What the fuck is this? I don't know what this is." I'd have to go back and listen to it. I usually listen to all the random shit about CS. So.
Yeah, I've definitely missed a few key points in there at some point. I'm sure.
Oh well.
But that's that kind of the base. And then just the last thing, which is like really weird. I'm pretty sure this is the same day. So we get in the lift. It's like 1:30 or 1:45 in the morning, whatever. And we get in the lift and there's just fucking blood on the floor. We're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, righto.
Like, all right, sick. And it kind of like stank of piss. And we're like, okay, what's happened here then?
Just remind me never to go to Finland then. Like, this just seems whack.
Honestly, the Finnish people were like super lovely, but that is the base of the Sea Hag's the Sea Hag's Lair. We got like accosted and chased by these people who like wouldn't leave us alone. And then to round it all off, the next night, Richard and Veracity went back. I didn't because I was on a phone with a friend and I think it ended up going on super long. I was catching up with them and then before I knew it, it was like maybe like 12:30 at this point. I was like, I can't be asked to walk 20 minutes on my own to go to this place, which is we're not even going to be there that long and then come back. So I ended up just kind of going to bed. And it was probably the smart decision because I had the grand finals the next day and it was, best of 5 and whatever. And I thought, let me be 100%
what
for
a
this.
professional.
Yeah, what can I say? Hire me for your events. So yeah, I was like, I want to be 100% fresh for tomorrow. I think that, as well, like, you feel a little bit of like a dry throat. I'm like, okay,
yeah.
I'm not going to drink it.
Shut it down.
Let me go have an early night.
Yeah.
Take some, some meds or whatever, and I'll be 100% tomorrow. And thankfully I was. And it was a really good game, so it ended up being obviously worthwhile. But Richard went back and he texted me. He was like, "Oh no, the Sea Hag's not here. You should come." But I was still on the phone at this point. But then he told me the next day that the guy was there. Oh. The guy who had called him a fraud. And Richard sees him at the bar. But again, this comes back to Richard being like one of the nicest people ever, basically. He goes up to him. He's like, "Hey, mate, I'm sorry about threatening to wrap a fucking chair around your head. Let me buy you a beer. Like, I'm sorry about that. I was, it was accumulation of things. I just didn't like what I was called. And, I was tired and whatever." And then the guy was like, "Oh, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I was trying to make a joke, but I'm Finnish." And I think that's fair enough. Like, this, it was unbelievably dry that it, like, there was no hint of sarcasm kind of thing. That was just like, he was trying to be funny, but he did not say it very well, which is kind of why he was trying to protest, but his English wasn't fantastic. Right. So there was no saving him there because the sarcasm was not clear. I mean, like, English people basically only use sarcasm.
Correct. Yeah.
And I couldn't even detect it. I was like, you called him a fraud, and I was like, so it was no way detecting this. But yeah, he offered him to buy. He bought me like a lager, I think, and then they ended up being like,
everyone's
sorry,
happy
on their own way, and then that was essentially the nice ending to it all. We never saw the lady again, but in the end, it was pretty.
So everyone was happy except for the hag lady,
except the hag lady, who we never saw.
Who
again.
Maybe upside down in a ditch at this point. But
yeah, who knows?
Who really
Did she make it home? Who knows? Did the lights burn her to a crisp because she's a vampire?
Yeah, maybe. I was going to say, this sounds like the start to like a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like it's like the start to a zombie movie, and she's the first zombie, but you just didn't realize she was halfway turned.
Yeah, no joke. We were actually like, there's something wrong with her. Like, she was like stumbling and like screeching, and we were like, and half the things she was saying wasn't even like comprehensible. Like, it wasn't Finnish, it wasn't English. It was just like screeches, and we were like, this is like a gargoyle behind us. Like, it was, yeah. That, like, I don't know if you've ever seen like Babadook. There's like some like shit horror movie, but she was Babadook.
Don't go to Finland.
No, do. Finland was actually really lovely. It was just that one lady. The rest of Finland, I gotta say, the rest of the people were lovely, and Elisa was a sick event.
All right. So. Well, there you go. That's what $5 buys you on the Geographically Challenged podcast. 30 minutes of content. So advertisers, I mean, that's a pretty good deal as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, get
on for the sponsor box. All right. For those of you that are here for Counter-Strike, now we can talk Counter-Strike. So hopefully, if you wanted to just listen to Counter-Strike, you've skipped to this part with the timestamp. But Major time is well and truly underway.
Yes.
We've just finished off the Elimination Stage, just about to go into the playoffs. And Nao's been talking for 30 minutes straight, so he's going to take some drinking time. I want to, before I talk too much, apologize. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but my voice or my nose is so blocked because we're here in China and we've been in the dry air, and I just cannot. There's no air. No air will go through my nose right now, so I felt like I sound really nasally.
I've got one working nostril, one right now.
Mine's like probably 0.1% of a working nostril.
Did you have one of those like medicine things?
No, pseudoephedrine.
Well, I don't know. But the one in the talent room, we've got like a medicine.
Oh, no, I brought one back. No.
Okay.
I thought you were since we're on the topic of tangents, this is just the not Counter-Strike version of Geographically Challenged.
Yeah.
We have a mate here who we've never worked with. His name is Bench. He's absolutely fucking cooked. He's Korean. He's an absolute degenerate. Shout out Bench.
Yeah, shout out Bench. Degen.
He's absolute degen. 1 a.m. every night. He's like, anyone want to go to the bar? Like, mate, I've just worked a 14-hour day.
Yeah, also the bar closed at midnight. It's like, it closed an hour ago.
Every night he goes down, he's like, oh, the fucking bar's closed. I'm like, well, no shit.
Yeah,
it closed yesterday.
Still a weekday, man.
Anyway, I was having breakfast with him the other day. I'm like, man, my nose is fucked.
Yeah.
It's really blocked. He's like, oh, I've got some of this pseudoephedrine. You can just have it. I'm like, all right. And then I'm thinking, what if this guy, like, I've never met this guy. What if he just fucking drops some random pill on me? Like,
here's MDMA.
Yeah, like just some MDMA or some fucking, like, I thought it would be like erectile dysfunction pill, like Viagra or something. Just for a gag, I'm like, but no one would do that.
On the broadcast, just fucking brilliant.
Yeah. I took one in the morning and I was just like, just watching for 10 minutes just to make sure, you know what I mean? Because like, this is
no movement from you, mate. Stay down.
This is not doing anything for my nose. Anyway, for what it's worth, it didn't fucking stop my my sinuses from just being blocked. So
I gotta say, I think the one thing that doesn't help with this like sinus, like obviously we've all of us are ill basically. I think one person was ill. I think it probably was Bench. Bench kind of turned up a little bit ill.
Yeah,
and I think the rest of us have sort of caught it off him. Like Valdez is now a little bit ill today.
I'm better now. I've been probably 2-3 days off being my worst.
I'm like, I just got like, it's just dry. Like you said, I don't think it helps though that like every single, like, not even like place, every room we go into is a different temperature.
Yeah.
And like, obviously for those who live like, for example, in England or any country, when you go from a cold place to a hot place or vice versa, your nose just kind of runs because it's sort of adjusting temperature. We're doing that every room we walk into. Like the difference between my room and Jordan's room is like tenfold. The corridor, but then even in the arena, it's like some days we turn up and it's absolutely freezing. Some days we're like shivering. I've had it like where I'm like absolutely shivering. I'm from England, right? I'm used to the cold. And then other days it's like roasting.
Today
was hot. Yeah. You cannot wear a jacket.
They put the heater on because the players complained it was too cold, which is
and
fair.
It was a Brazilian and a Vietnamese team, so obviously they're used to the heat.
Fucking hot.
Yeah, it was warm, right? So but then outside it's fucking freezing. So everywhere you walk, different temperature. I think that's probably one of the reasons. Yeah. Kind of dry, the air, and obviously like there's quite a lot of smog. Generally, the air quality is not like incredible. I mean, it's not really used to probably what we're used to, I guess. Yeah. And I live in London, but I live in quite a green part.
Yeah. I mean, Australia's crazy. Like this is just so much different to Australia. Like Australia's, you walk outside, there's never any smog ever.
Yeah,
so, I don't know. It's probably a combination of all of those things. Being under the weather. Also, air quality,
working quite a lot,
air conditioning, dry air,
working,
talking, barely, bad sleep.
Yeah.
Anyway, 4 lessons from this video so far. Don't go to Finland. I can't remember the other 3. I'm fucked. One of them was don't accept drugs from a stranger.
Yes, smart one. Remember that, kids.
Can't remember the 3rd one. 4th one is pick Mongolz. To bring it back to Counter-Strike?
That might be
Pick Mongolz? Like, all right, let's get into the CS discussion. No more tangents because the people are actually here for some Counter-Strike discussion.
Yeah.
Elimination Stage just finished. And Mongolz have gone 3-0. Vitality's gone 3-0. One of those is not like the other. Everyone would have predicted Vitality. I had Vitality on my pick-ups. I thought 3-0 Vitality, 3-0 Na'Vi. That seems like a safe pick. Obviously, Na'Vi fucking bombed out, so that's a conversation point in and of itself.
Yep.
But Vitality, I don't think really... There's much to say there beyond like job done. We'll see how they go in playoffs. They look fine.
They were going 3-1 at the worst case scenario.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
But I think the biggest talking point here is obviously Mongolz going 3-0 is fucking insane. So far they're like undefeated at the major, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But also the run that they have. If I read you who Vitality played against, Game Legion, Furia, MIBR, you're like, all right, like those are some okay teams.
Pretty average.
But there's nothing special there. And then you look at Mongolz, and they play G2, Mao's, Heroic.
Yeah.
Which of those is more impressive as a 3-0 run?
And also considering on the flip side that Heroic have had an insane run. They've played so many hard teams and overcome them.
Yeah.
Obviously eliminating Na'Vi as well. So, I think a lot of people will look at that and be like, well, G2 snacks, haha, this team is so up and down, whatever. And then they're also like, yeah, but Heroic, whatever. That's not the case. Heroic are like arguably, but maybe not so arguably, I would say like a top 5 team right now. Like their form and like for the most part consistency is like insane. Like back-to-back finals with Elisa and a Thunderpick,
yep.
yeah, which obviously they lost to the Mongols.
Yep.
And then a really good run here. So I think you can't discount them anymore, right? No. So that puts even more credit onto the run of the Mongols. And Ryan's saying they've only dropped like one map, right? The entire major.
Mongols, the only map they lost was to Heroic, yeah.
Yeah. So only dropped one map so far.
Which ironically was right after the tweet that I said Mongols is going to win the major without dropping a map. So cursed, but...
Did they... I wasn't watching the Asia RMR, but did they drop a map?
They did, to Drillers. They lost the map to Drillers.
Oh, of course.
They got fucking rolled on it, though.
And
It was
they
like
got reverse
they
sweeped.
didn't turn their fucking monitor on for that map, though.
Yeah.
I think they lost like 13-4 or something.
It's true. And then they reverse sweeped, yeah. Because I remember Drillers were one map away.
So basically, Drillers is better than G2 and Mouse, confirmed. Lock
yeah,
in.
exactly. So that's it. So we've dropped what? In the entire RMR into opening stage, into elimination stage, whatever, we've only dropped 2 maps.
Yeah.
That is bonkers. For what is essentially a bunch of kids.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Like, I think, obviously I want to talk about Mongols a lot because we are primarily an Asia-focused podcast to begin with and Mongolia fanboys and whatever. But beyond that fact, I think now it seems to have really captured the zeitgeist of the Counter-Strike community beyond the people who are interested in Asia. Like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, no one's like, people are talking about Mongols. People are like, oh, Mongols are pretty good. They should be okay, but they're not going to do like anything. They might make the elimination stage and that's good. Even when we recorded the podcast, not the one with you last week, but the one that I did with Pilski and Bleh before I left to come here, which was like the pre-major episode post RMR.
Sure.
We were sort of like, we'd be happy if they make it to the elimination stage. And if they do well in the elimination stage and make it to playoffs, that's like they've reached the goal for this time. Now it feels like, well, they've just fucking blown that out of the water. And people are starting to talk about that. And I think people are starting to talk about it in more of a joking manner that, oh, Mongols could win this major. But and to be fair, I was originally kind of joking. I was joking when I said Mongols can win the major.
Yeah.
But now I'm low-key starting to believe.
Yeah.
I am starting to believe.
And they've gotten, I would say, an easier side of the bracket.
The bracket is good.
It's not, nothing's easy in the final 8, but easier, I would argue.
Well, yeah. I mean, Vitality's on the opposite side of the bracket.
Exactly.
G2's on the opposite side of the bracket.
FaZe. Not that FaZe look great.
I think Mongols would kind of go through FaZe okay, to be honest. I actually think Mongolz is probably the scarier team for Mongols in this bracket. Spirit, they've already been able to beat at some point.
Yeah.
And Spirit are a bit up and down. Look, Spirit could definitely win. Like, the thing about this bracket is, I always think you can look at that and go, like, any of these teams probably could make it. It's a very competitive looking bracket. I'd say the only outside chances maybe are like Liquid and FaZe feel like they're still a bit wishy-washy for me.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Mongols feel like, there's a world where they could win. Again, maybe they're not the favorite, but it's doable. Mongolz could do it. I think Spirit definitely, G2 definitely, Heroic definitely, Vitality absolutely are the favorites, no questions.
Yes.
So, it does feel like a very competitive bracket, but it feels like a doable bracket. So I think if Mongols can get over Mongolz, I think they make the final. That would be my take. But Mongolz is obviously a bit of a difficult team for them to play. I mean, in that best of one, it kind of looked like Mongols should lose that BO1. They had a really nice comeback there.
Yep.
A lot of mental fortitude, mental tenacity, which is great. We see that a lot from the Mongols. So credit where it's due. But if we really look at that in isolation, you probably say, well, look, maybe 8 times out of 10, Mals actually do close that out.
It's true.
And also, this is now a best of 3, not just a best of 1. So you've got to do it over 2 maps. And, at some point, I think I have, like, in the back of my head, this feeling that, like, it can't keep happening. Like, it can't keep going right.
Yeah.
Because...
But then again, so that's the mindset I've had for ages. Like, things can't, the stars can't keep aligning.
Exactly. Like, I'm the fan of Asia. I've watched it happen so many times where I've got hype behind a team, and then just as you're like, oh, now I'm actually genuinely starting to believe, it breaks. It's the same thing with FlyQuest in the opening stage. They go 2-0 up. You're like, holy shit, these guys are looking fucking awesome. They might be able to squeak out at least one more win and go 3-2 or 3-1 or, God forbid, a 3-0 would have been crazy. But like, I actually, at that point, after having watched those 2 BO1s, thought, yeah, this is actually doable. And then that's the point at which it goes, nah, not anymore.
I could
Fuck your
sense that
dreams,
2-3 happen all day.
And I'm like, am I at that point now with Mongolz where it's like they've had such a clean run,
yeah.
but now we're into like single elim, basically single elim BO3, sure, but single elim, all it takes is one bad game, and then this whole dream run is just like cut short, and it will feel like a little bit more disappointing for the fact that they've looked so good up to this point.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair enough point, right? The way I look at it is like every time I sort of get into that mindset of like, surely like the stars can't keep aligning and surely things can't keep going to space.
Right.
I actually think about some of the other runs. Like I think about like Spirit of Kato, right? Like surely Donk can't keep playing this well.
Yeah.
It does, right?
Yeah.
Or I think the great example I think is surely G2 with Stu can't win Dallas. They can't keep winning Dallas, and they do. So that's where a part of me is like, maybe they actually can. I feel like in my mind, like a lot of us do that kind of naturally. We're like, you know, these are underdogs ultimately, and you know, someday it's going to slip up. But that's kind of the beauty of the major is that all you need is one good run. I mean, and things kind of go into your place. It's not in the same vein, but you know, like outsiders winning the major, no one expected them to win the major in Rio, right? So it's like, you know, surely outsiders can't win the major when they kept sort of picking up wins. Everyone thought it was gonna be like, you know, your heroics or basically anybody else, even like Fury at one point when they made it to the semis and stuff. So that's sort of where part of me is that, but being the realist and being the European centric,
right? Everyone fucking hated you in the comment. Not everyone.
Yeah.
But you did get a couple of hate comments like, this guy comes in on our fucking Asia podcast and talks for 15 minutes about Fnatic. Like, come on.
Yeah, I know.
Who's this guy?
Which is insane because we're talking about the
major.
The major, yeah. You know, I'm going to talk about other teams.
These Europeans will never understand us.
Yeah, they will never understand. I've heard that from Brazil before.
Yeah.
They will never understand.
Welcome to Asia, motherfucker.
Yeah.
You're in my territory now. We're in China.
Being the realist, like, Mao's probably do come in as the favourites. The only, like, counter
in that match.
In that match.
Just to clarify.
The only counter, I guess, in a sense, so first of all, like I always think Mao's preparation is like insane for like revenge games, right? And like that's where I feel like they're always sort of like a team that I always look at. Cyclone does so much prep. Shuhei is such a good caller, but this is the thing: like Mongols are gonna have the crowd on their side, right?
Right.
Which is, I think they basically will for the entirety unless they play against G2.
I think they have pretty much the entire neutral Counter-Strike world behind them. If you're not a fan of, like, if you're not already a fan of Mao's, you cheer for Mongol. Like,
absolutely.
Anyone who's like, oh, I'm like an impartial viewer here. I don't have let's say you're a Na'Vi fan.
Yeah.
Like now you're probably cheering Mongols.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Literally anybody who
doesn't have a horse in the race.
Even if you're like a Vitality fan, you are cheering for Mongols until they play Vitality.
Correct.
Exactly. So, like,
exactly.
It's like you're actually, no matter who you go, like who's playing up against them, you're always going to be on the left side unless you're G2. Because in the arena,
G2's or FaZe. I think FaZe has a big fan base in China as well. Yeah.
Like there's no two ways about it. Like I kind of hate this narrative of like, oh, because they're Asian, the Chinese people have to support them. No, they don't.
No, I get what you're saying, and that's 100% true. And there is like obviously a little bit of history between China and Mongolia.
Yeah, exactly.
But the reason I think there is some validity to that argument, and I don't know that it's actually true.
Yeah.
But in my head, the way that it should work, and the way that this is the way that works for me as someone from the region is. Obviously, I'm not Mongolian.
Yeah.
Right? I couldn't give two fucks about it from that perspective.
Yeah.
But I see them as an extension of my region. So by being an ANZ supporter, I want ANZ to do well. Therefore, inherently, I want Asia to do well because we are the sub-region and we're the underdogs. And I think we should sort of band together, you know what I mean? Because
the issue with that
but I don't know that people see it like that. I don't know that everybody sees it like that.
Unfortunately, I don't think China give a fuck.
Yeah.
I just don't think
I think that's it. That's true. And I think China supports China. That's just how it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think to an extent, honestly, as well, from what I've seen from the Mongolian fans, they really only support the Mongolian teams. Like they're not cheering for China when they're like, you know what I mean? Like, and fair enough.
Not like woo, well, it makes Rare Atom stories quite nice, but not like, I'm glad Ty Lue won ECL. You know what I mean? They don't give a fuck.
I think I'm a bit more of like a general holistic fan of Asia in a different way to most people.
I guess for me, who's like, I mean, I've done like 4 or 5 seasons of ESL Challenger League Asia. You know, we did Mongolia together. I've done my fair share of kind of Asian events and whatnot. So I always feel like I'm not obviously part of the region, but I always like seeing it grow, especially because I was working it when it wasn't as big.
It's never been as big as it is now.
Well, exactly. It's nice to see it growing, but also with teams like the Mongols doing well, it is a net positive for the entirety of the Asian scene.
Correct.
But I do think generally the average fan in Shanghai
I think so.
isn't going to care
I think you're right. 100%,
as much
100%.
if it's against G2, maybe FaZe. But like I know G2 for definite, they are the crowd favorites without a shadow of a doubt. Like everybody loves them. Everybody loves Monacy as well.
It's also a really good storyline for G2 with
But the good news is basically I don't think G2 and Mongols are ever going to face off against each other. I don't think G2 make it to the finals.
I reckon G2 Mongols final is possible.
I reckon it's Vitality Mongols final.
I think if Mongols is going to win this major, it's G2 Mongols.
So
I don't think Mongols beats Vitality in the final, for example.
No. I don't either. G2
or Heroic or FaZe, like let's say FaZe upsets Vitality somehow.
Yeah.
I actually think Mongols can beat FaZe.
Oh, I agree.
I think Vitality's the only untouchable for Mongols.
Because Brokies look, so I agree with that absolutely. I think so. The way I think it goes one of two ways for me. I think for my I think Vitality. This is gonna you can say this, pick'ems are always random anyway. You know what I mean? Like half of us have been fucked by pick'ems anyway. But I think
I'm still on for Diamond, by the way.
There we go. Right, but I think Vitality should make it to the final on their side of the bracket.
They're the safe pick.
Yeah, and I think. Probably for me, they're the favourites to win it. If I had to offer.
No, for sure.
I think there's basically the other side. I think it's one of two things. I think it's either Mongols win and then go all the way to the final. I don't think anybody so it's Heroic, Liquid, and the other side.
It's Mongols, Mao's, Spirit, Liquid on top side.
Spirit, Liquid. Sorry, Spirit, Liquid. Yeah. So I don't think Spirit or Liquid beat Mongols currently.
Well, it's not like a guaranteed either way. You know what I mean? Like it's in that particular matchup. Let's say Spirit, Liquid, doesn't really matter who.
Yeah.
Mongols can win that as often as they can lose it.
Well, this is how I think it's going to go. I think it's going to be for the other side of the bracket, Vitality make it to the finals, probably win it. I think on the other side, it goes one of two ways. It's either Mongols go all the way or they insta lose to Mao's.
Sure, I agree.
There's no other. I don't think they make it to the semis and then lose to a Spirit or Liquid.
Yeah.
Because I think it's either like, do Mongols keep up this form? Do they keep up this like insane fairy tale run in their like home continent and sort of show that Asia Counter-Strike can do it on the big stage? Because I guess this is like the beautiful thing about this Mongols run, which is like why it's been so nice for me at the very least to see is like this is proving so many like of these like these like soft Twitter points wrong of where like for example when they won Thunderpick, everyone was like, oh fucking like who cares, Mickey Mouse tournament, yada yada. They went to 5th in the Valve rankings. Everyone's like, oh, like who cares? Who's the fuck? Even though now they're up
fake
3rd.
Ranking.
He's like, a fake ranking. Yeah, whatever. And people were saying like, Mongols aren't even a top 10 team. And they just got because they won a Mickey Mouse tournament against Heroic. This, that, and the other. Which, first of all, I think there's merit to it in the sense that this is a different day, different conversation. But I don't think prize money alone should dictate your ranking.
100%.
That is.
I could talk for 30 minutes about that.
Yeah, exactly. What is to stop me being Naokai Esports holding $1 million tournament, winner takes all, and then fucking rigging it? Obviously, next year that can't happen, but this year there's no rules technically. So, but anyway, so that's a conversation itself. But what the proof of this is that they actually are a top 10 team, and they actually are a top 5 team currently in terms of their form and the run they've had. So it's actually been quite satisfying to see a lot of people essentially backtrack for the most part, especially like. I mean, when I say a lot of people, I'm talking like, the average Tom, Billy, and Joe.
Tom, Dick, and Harry.
Yeah, fucking in the comments of like random tweets or whatever. Like, I mean, I remember in particular reading, it was like, Mongols are number 5 in the world after winning Thunderpick. And like, if you go back on like, I think it's HTV who tweeted that, you go back and look at the comments or whatever, it's just full of people being like, this is such a shit ranking system, this is so fake, yada yada. And I remember watching it, be like, I watched the Thunderpick finals and be like, they're playing an incredible brand of Counter-Strike. The last time they picked up a loss was at Elisa.
The thing is,
I casted that. It was pretty poor, but whatever, right?
There will always be an inherent lag to rankings.
Yeah.
So they're already playing to that level before they get to that point in the ranking.
Yes.
Because they need to play to that level to get the results to get to that ranking. So by the time that they're top 5 in the ranking, maybe they've been top 5 for like a month or two.
Yeah.
And granted, I don't think that's the case here necessarily. I am on that side of when they got top 5 at that time. I don't think you could really look at that and say they have the results to justify top 5 currently in this moment.
Yeah. No,
now you can. Now you can look back in hindsight and go, fucking oath, yeah.
Because they weren't actually beating big enough teams on a regular enough basis.
Like right now.
Top 5, but now they are.
Right now they're top 3. They're 3rd in the Valve ranking. Are they? Can you justify them being the 3rd best team in the world right now?
I mean,
I don't think you can
the way I would put it is like
right now in this moment before having seen the playoffs of the major.
Yeah. So this is the thing. This is where it's like, this is where it's a little bit weird because the number one team aren't here.
Right.
So then it's like, there's two ways of looking at it. You either say like, yes.
Well, is it G2's number one?
Oh,
in
yeah.
the Valve ranking?
Oh, they technically are actually, yeah.
So,
but I'm my assumption on Na'Vi
yeah.
is what I mean here. But the way I'm looking at it is like the two ways of looking at it. You can say yes, and then be like current form as of today, Monday the 9th.
Yep.
They are the third best team in the world. I think that is a fair enough statement to say right now. Like if you were to put them in like who is playing the best Counter-Strike and the most consistent Counter-Strike and beating the biggest teams, yada yada. I do think there's actually a fair argument there for it. However, I don't think because that's not how rankings work and that's not how the grand scheme works.
Yeah.
So I think no, if I'm being honest, because I think to be a top 3 for me, you have to like
you have to have won an S tier event.
To be a legitimate top 3, you have to have won a top event or make a regular finals appearance in a top event. Like for example, let's say like Heroic, who have done finals. Let's say that those finals were, instead of being Thunderpick and Elisa, let's say instead they were, I don't know, I Am Dallas and I don't know, a Major, whatever. Then it's like, okay, fair enough. You guys are like a top 3 because you are making it to the top of an event. So I think that Mongolz, to justify that ranking, they have to make minimum top 4
they need to make
at this
semis.
event.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Which is doable, first of all.
For sure.
But if they do, if they don't, they're still going to keep this ranking for like a good
They'll be
month.
top 5 if they don't.
Well,
and I think that's fine. I think top 5, top 8. I mean, you made top 8. But let's say they'd probably be top 5 if they lose to Mouse. I think they still probably maintain top 5.
Yeah, exactly.
At which point, I think that's fair.
And they'll keep that probably until, if we're being honest,
next year,
end of January into early February. Only event going is
after the Blast Bounty.
Yeah. But Blast Bounty, if I'm right in saying, it's primarily like 1.5 teams because it builds up into the open series.
I actually don't know how that works.
I think so. Who knows? They haven't announced teams yet, but yeah. Essentially, I think it's a little bit more of a tier 1.5 into then the open series, which is like the kind of like the shoutouts. Anyway, so they're going to keep that ranking for all, which is great because it means they're going to get invites, which is insane. That's all we want, because the more you get invites, the more you get to play big tournaments. When you get big tournaments, the more you get to justify yourself, and that's where that's when we'll like really coax over the believers. But I think the thing with Mongolz is that it's really hard to legitimately say, because in the same vein that Na'Vi could be like, it's just one tournament.
Yeah.
Mongolz Hater could be like, it's just one tournament. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it becomes not just one tournament after. Like, it's just one tournament when they win Yalla Compass.
Yes,
it's just one tournament when they win Thunderpeak. And there's always like that excuse, but like, if it's the major...
Yeah, absolutely.
Then it's no longer just one tournament. It's you won the major, you won Thunderpeak, you won Yalla Compass.
Yes.
You won fucking all these, Mesonomatic
Masters.
whatever. But that's still a fucking that's still a title.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly it. So that's where, I mean, I believe this is a top 5 team. Like,
I agree.
In the way they're playing right now. I'm fully on the hype train of Mongolz. I mean, we've got to spend time with the guys as well in Mongolia. Lovely people. So like, it's one of those things like, it's actually nice because it couldn't have happened to a nicer bunch. They're a lovely group of kids, and we got to meet them, whatever. Got to have a little chat with Techno as well. Elisa, super nice guy, obviously then. But the thing is, the only way you convince the haters, which obviously isn't us, right? But like, that's what we want. We want the people who are like the doubters.
Right.
The way you convince them is getting a top 4 here, and then you be like, see?
I think the biggest thing working against Mongols in a lot of people's minds is that they are from Asia. Like, and it's not like a racism thing. That sounds like it's a racism thing. No, I think it's just people have this
scenism thing.
Yeah, they have this like bias that like, oh, Asia kind of sucks. So
because
you have to like overcome that and then some to really prove those people wrong. It's kind of like you just have to go above and beyond in a way.
The last time we saw a playoff team from Asia as a region was Renegades. Am I right in saying?
Yeah. And before that, it would have been the Tyloo roster.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So,
and those are really the only 2.
Exactly, and that Tyloo is probably the only comparable one in terms of not the heights they reached. I think Mongolz have superseded the heights, but that Tyloo team were a top 10 team ranking wise for at least a brief.
Well, Renegades was top 4 at a major.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So, if they see, this is where you get into that discussion. Is like, is Renegades part of Asia? They are Asia Pacific. I kind of consider them as part of Asia because that's what Valve considers part of Asia.
Yes, I think.
But most people, when they say Asia, don't.
Exactly, a casual fan, if you said Asia, they wouldn't say Oz, they would say Australia, and they wouldn't say Asia.
Yeah, yeah.
I think is like the difference there.
I just think we need to start saying Asia Pacific because that's what it is. It is the Asia Pacific
Or just say
RMR.
APAC, like every other game.
The sub-region
yeah.
is APAC, yes. But everyone's hung up on Asia because that's terminology that's been around for a very long time.
Yeah, precisely, exactly. So that is exactly it. We need to just adopt what every other game does and say APAC.
Yeah.
Because it makes everything 10 times easier.
Yep. At which point, Mongolz need to make top 4 to be the best APAC team.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And then, I mean, I already think...
Although I think you could make the argument that they have already eclipsed Renegades,
Yes.
even though they haven't got that major top 4, just because the consistency of the results that they've had has been better than what that Renegades roster.
Yeah,
Renegades roster had a very good peak,
exactly.
making top 4 at that
but
major.
But it was a flash in the pan.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that my argument is that, like, I mean, I've been kind of saying this to like friends and stuff at home. Like, I think this is the greatest APAC team of all time. Like.
Yep. I mean, I don't have any insight into We Made Fox. That's a conversation from 1.6 or Source or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say of all time in Counter Strike,
I'm thinking go onwards.
But definitely go onwards.
Yeah. I'm too young for 1.6.
Even I am. Like I've started in Go. Like when Go came out,
I'm pretty sure Counter Strike's older than me.
Yeah,
so 25
it's 25, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even 25.
Yeah.
So I don't count Source or 1.6 personally. Sorry. I know that's going to piss off some of the boomers. I apologize.
But for what it's worth, like it is just it's apples to oranges. Like I think, look, honestly, I think there's definitely a reasonable argument to say like those games and tournaments and what have you that were played in 1.6 are just not even on the same fucking plane of existence as what we've got now.
No one thought it was going to be even remotely as big as this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
So I do think that there's definitely more relevance to like if you were to weight what events and what results are better, quote unquote. 2024 is way more valuable in my opinion. Anyway, so yeah, I think you can make an argument for best of all time, even including We Made Fox. But people do like to sort of go back and forth about that.
Counter though, just in terms of the ranking thing, I know this is like a point we can go on for ages. If they do lose to Mongolz instantly,
sure,
where do you think their ranking should be in like a fair one? Do you think
fifth?
Still,
something around fifth.
Yeah,
you know, because you know when you look at it, like they are reasonably consistently beating those kinds of teams, like those top sort of 8 teams, like your Heroics and your Eternal Fires. Obviously, they're not at the major, but you know they're up there. And Mongolz, they've been able to get over the line against a little bit. G2 a couple times as well. They beat them at Pro League back Spirit. They've beaten in the BO3 as well. So like you know, you might put G2 above them in 4th or 5th or 3rd or something like that. You know, Na'Vi I think still maintains like a top 3 probably, even though they don't make.
I think probably
playoffs.
like 3rd. I would say. I mean, obviously very dependent on the finishing, but like let's just assume everything goes probably the way it should go. Like
Vitality 1, maybe G2
2,
but then G2 loses to Vitality in the semi-final in that.
True.
And maybe Mongolz beats Mongolz and goes to the
grand
final.
Currently?
I actually couldn't tell you. I mean, I can have.
Are they 4th or 5th? It should be like in the top 3, like G2, Na'Vi, Vitality. Oh no, sorry, Mongolz obviously. So top 5 of maybe Mongolz are in that top 5. They're the 5th team.
I'll tell you in a second. The internet's fucking slow.
Of the Mongolz G2, Na'Vi, Vitality.
HLTV ranking is Na'Vi, G2, Vitality, Spirit, Mongolz, top 5. Valve ranking is G2, Vitality, Spirit, Mongolz, Na'Vi.
Okay.
So I think Vitality leapfrogs G2. Spirit probably drops a little bit. I think Mongolz is maybe a little bit better. But anyway, look, it's really a moot point, honestly. This is semantics. This is going down the rabbit hole where we really, really don't need to be. But I think somewhere around top 5 is pretty fair for the Mongolz at this point, unless they go deep in this major. If they make finals, top 3.
Yes.
If they make semis, I think still you're probably making the argument of top 5, depending on who they lose to. Like if they would lose to Liquid, probably Liquid isn't then doing enough to like leapfrog the Mongolz. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think this is a super moot point. We're probably getting into the nitty gritty a little bit too much, but I think the big takeaway is like Mongolz. Yeah, they're legit. They definitely deserve to be within the top 5, and if they do very well at this major,
which they
very much could,
yeah.
I think then they can really justify that top 3 as well.
Sort of the big thing is we want them to as well, just because like the externalities
for
the scene.
Well, let's get into that because I wanted to just quickly like contextualize it and think about all the previous major runs in history and how important some of them have been.
Yeah.
When we are looking at the rise of the Brazilian region, right? Like with the Luminosity SK sort of situation. This is kind of reminiscent of that in a way. I don't know. Were you around back then? Was that
to a degree? It's more so like I was not watching at the time,
Yeah.
but basically like just for context, so for me, I started playing Counter-Strike 2016, started watching Counter-Strike 2018.
Yeah.
But when I started like really getting into it, it's like maybe like 2019, 2020, and I really, really got into the pro scene, I realized there was like, I'd watch the death segments, or I'd watch cast and I'd hear stuff and I wouldn't understand it.
Yeah.
So I spent like, I remember it was like start of COVID, like right at the start of COVID, or maybe even before that, but basically like 2019, 2020, I spent a long time going back and I just rewatched the entire year's worth of tournaments. I would watch I'd watch like E-Leagues from like 2016, all of these sort of tournaments, like Beyond the Summits and stuff like that, which is why like I always say like Beyond the Summit is like my favorite event that I ever watched, but like I wasn't watching those live, for the most part. I think I maybe caught a couple just before COVID, but like most of them I wasn't watching live. I'd go and rewatch them after. So so I know it after the fact, not live. So I don't know what the impact was like at the time.
Well, I think just contextually for those who are maybe in that same situation that weren't there, it was kind of like, it was like every event you'd watch, you'd be like, whoa, like these guys are doing it again. And that's kind of what the Mongolz is like right now. It's like, well, they're doing it again. They're doing it at a better event. They're doing it at a major.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they won the major. They won a major, and it was like, holy shit, these guys are legit. And then obviously, as you've seen, that's kind of like just created a huge region. Brazil's obviously a massive region when it comes to CS. It's a huge part of the ecosystem.
Probably say
so
like one of, if not the most like
biggest
dedicated.
Yeah. And I don't know that Mongolia can ever really get there just sheerly because of the numbers of like individuals that live there. There's like 3 million people that live there, but like
it's like 1.5 of them in Ulaanbaatar.
My point is that like what the run that Mongolz is doing is fucking hard to talk. My fucking nose, bro. The run that Mongolz is doing is somewhat reminiscent of that, or the other one that I obviously have brought up a lot, like the two that it sort of like matches with in my mind is that Luminosity SK kind of era that got built, and it's like, are we at the start of the Mongolz doing something like that? Obviously, it's too early to tell. Or is it a bit like the C9 Boston Major run where
it's a one-off?
It's a one-off, but like it will forever be remembered as like one of the greatest moments in history of like, because if Mongolz would win, it is the same kind of story as the Boston Major.
Yes, because they're not expected to be there.
They're not expected
to. Never have made it to the final. Never mind won the final in the fashion they won the final.
And also, it's in their region.
Yes,
right, and that's like the other parallel that I think
is
really,
major
really
we've
cool.
had.
First major in Asia. It's like all the planets aligning, peaking at the same time. So I think there's a couple of cool parallels there, and just like in terms of how interesting those storylines are, I think it's important to kind of recognize that this is something very, very special if it were to happen. Again, it may not, but this is like a time capsule in a way. There's a conversation right now. If in a week's time
they win,
Mongols have won, we look back at this and go, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like we were on the cusp of something and we didn't even know it.
Exactly. Well, and this is the thing, like if I'm being, obviously it's impossible to predict these things because you don't know how the world works. But if I had to make an assumption based off what it is now, if the Mongols were to win the major, I think it would be more akin to C9.
Yeah.
Not in the sense that I think it's a fluke and they're going to drop off. Not anything like that. I always akin SK and Luminosity and all of these, right? Even like Immortals, I guess, before that as well. Like all these like Brazilian teams that did super well. I always akin that to like, it's not about the major they won, it's about the legacy it built.
It would need to be more than just this.
Yes, it wasn't like the big, I guess the big thing with those Brazilian teams that won the major, it wasn't about winning the major, it's about what happened post winning the major, which is one of the most dedicated and devoted scenes was built, not off the back of it, but largely helped by that, which started a massive thing, right? And like you spoke about, I don't think that would happen in terms of because Mongolia is considerably smaller, and it's it has its dedicated, but it's still ultimately in the grand scheme of the world and in the world of Counter-Strike, it still is a niche scene, the Mongolian Counter-Strike scene, right? So, but what I would say is the reason the hope is that it actually spurs on. So like I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference in Mongolia specifically, but the way like SK and but it could make a massive difference for Asia as a whole, right? And that's where you can't predict anything, but the hope is that it's more like the SK one in the sense that we then see Asia start to boom. Like we get to drag people away from like the likes of Valorant. Or actually, I think people always say this, like, I don't even know why I use that, because I actually don't like that thing, like, drag away from Valorant. Fuck, it's not about Valorant. It's about mobile games. That's what we need.
That's true.
That's the war we're fighting here. It's mobile games.
Especially in Asia.
Yeah, exactly. It's not Valorant. It's, if anything, it's good to have a competitive scene, because in a worst case, they can float between the two games.
But you know what? Actually, anecdotally, have you just seen this Fortnite 5v5 mode that they?
Yeah, I have.
That's literally that's where the next donk's coming from.
Releasing December 11th, the alpha.
Next donk coming from Fortnite.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, funny enough, I forget his name. One of the Brazilian players, it used to be a Fortnite pro. I forget his name. He played for Fluxo for a bit. Anyway, he was a Fortnite pro, and he came over, and he was crisp as hell. I don't think he plays that much anymore.
Do you know Fallen used to be a Crossfire pro?
Yes, I did know this. Yeah. And here we are doing Crossfire. Yeah, I know. Well, what a world.
What if one of these guys that's playing right now, like,
do you want to know another funny thing? Imperial, who are obviously here, their owner called, I think his name is Felipe, his name is. He's their sub. So if somebody gets ill, Felipe is playing.
There you go.
The owner of Imperial.
There you go.
So, because he used to also be a Crossfire pro. I'm assuming probably around the same time as Fallen.
Maybe playing in the same team.
Yeah, who knows?
Anyways.
But yeah, so the way I think it's probably going to be more akin to Cloud9 in the sense of it's like winning a major in your, I guess in this sense, continent, your home continent, for the first time in Asia, right? But obviously Boston didn't have any effect. Like American Counter-Strike arguably got worse. Like obviously it had the Liquid era, which is technically wrong, but it's obviously now it's degraded massively. Where the North American scene is probably one of the worst it's ever been in the States. I don't think it's going to happen to Asia. I think Asia's always going to have a lot of talent. It's always going to have a lot of these youngsters coming through. However, I think the thing of SK is that they built up this like long-lasting like ecosystem around this.
Yeah.
The hope is like we pray that if Mongolz win the major, it is like the SK sense where we get a super healthy ecosystem. I mean, I actually had a conversation with Nine, the ex-IHC Mongolz player, and he was saying apparently even politicians are actually getting really involved now that Mongolz are doing well, and they're even trying to do a funny thing where they're trying to stop kids playing mobile games and play PC games, play CS now because of how well the Mongols are doing.
There you go.
And all these politicians are trying to, obviously they're trying to use it for their own agendas, right?
Of course,
but like
of course.
they're trying to use the Mongols doing well to...
This reminds me, have you seen the... do you know who Pauline Hanson is?
No.
She's an Australian politician. And
No.
She made a tweet. I'm sure you've seen it at some point. It's like... Basically, she was saying something along the lines of, we need better internet. Because our kids are getting beat up on the internet by like Asians or some shit. It's just like, I can't remember. I'll have a look at what it is. You can keep going on a tangent. I'll find it.
This is the thing. Like we want it to be this healthy ecosystem built around it, and like this is not for specifically Mongolia. It's actually for the region. Like because this is the issue. Like I mean, we see it now at Crossfire, for example. We've got a massive Vietnamese scene, a massive Filipino scene. Obviously a huge Chinese scene. China is obviously arguably the best region in Crossfire, right? Which is, essentially a very similar game to CS 1.6, right? In terms of the way it looks, and the way it plays, and yada yada. So the hope is that with Mongolia doing well, and if they were to win, is that this inspires this like next generation from Asia to be like, we can actually do this. We're no longer like, the unfortunate thing for Asia, for ages, it always felt like we were like second tier sort of thing. I say we, I'm not really obviously part of Asia, but in part. On
He
the
will
podcast.
never understand.
But it's always felt, Asia has always felt sort of, it's been like EU,
Looked down upon.
NA, South America, Asia.
Yeah.
Or APAC,
100%,
I guess,
100%.
right? So the hope is that the whole of the region can then actually be like, no, we're not. Because obviously we need to see a little bit more from the rest of the teams, but this is the beauty of it. That the hope is that it inspires and says like this is how we build an ecosystem, and hopefully means that with viewing metrics. I mean, obviously viewing metrics are always going to be lower for Asian events because it's like a rough time for those in the EU. For example, the major games are starting at 2 a.m. our time, so the first 2 or 3 games most people aren't watching because they're asleep, right? So view metrics are always going to be lower, but the hope is that it shows in person that there's a really healthy appetite. I mean, when we were in Mongolia for Mesa, first of all, like the appetite was insane for Counter-Strike. You could tell people loved it, and everyone was super, super nice. Everyone was super interested. People were really enjoying talking to us about Counter-Strike and talking about the future of Counter-Strike, and that's a super nice conversation to have. So, like that is the hope, basically. Sure. So and that's what we want.
To add on to that, actually, I just saw a tweet by the Mongolz this evening that they had the highest viewership on a Mongolian stream.
57K, right?
50, I think it was 55.
Oh, 55,
55,000. That was on K. You know K.
My goat K.
Yeah.
I love that guy.
Shout outs to K. I hope to do a podcast with him in January. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink.
Yeah, looking forward to that. But I've obviously I talk to him every now and then, fairly reasonably. And I had a conversation with him at one point, and he said, like, I said, what's a good like viewership number? He's like, about 20,000.
Damn.
So you've gone up to 55,000 in the space of a major, basically.
And that's only in Mongolian too.
In Mongolian only. That's the Mongolian viewership stream.
Not that you should do it, but I'm just saying, like, I reckon if someone of K's stature was to, like, obviously his English isn't perfect, right?
Oh, it's pretty good.
He could actually be like a big like Mongolz official kind of streamer in a sense.
Yeah.
And be like,
the bridge.
A broad, exactly. The bridge between like the Mongolian. Obviously, like not everyone in Mongolia speaks English, so obviously stick to the language.
Well, I mean, that's kind of like what we're trying to do anyway. Like, I think for me, that's kind of what I try to do with this channel is like be the bridge for the Western audience, because we're obviously catering more to the Western audience, but still discussing the esports aspects and have the contacts in China, have the contacts in Mongolia, and kind of like get the scoop and get the information that isn't readily available necessarily. So, I think he's obviously really catering to the Mongolian audience, but I talk to him enough and kind of glean things from him and other people in Mongolia and stuff like that, and try to bring it to the people who want to have it be a bit more accessible in an English kind of form, because you have to go digging. That's the thing with Asia, is you really have to go digging for information if you want to find out what's happening, who's making roster changes,
roster moves, rumors, and
even tournaments that are happening in China. You have to really be like finger on the pulse, because they're not on HLTV, they're not advertised to the Western audience. They're barely on
Wikipedia, most of them as well. They just kind of appear and you're like, what the fuck?
Exactly. And half of them I don't even see, and then someone like messages in my Discord. By the way, you can join my Discord if you want. We talk about Asian Counter-Strike in there.
There you go.
That is where like half of my talking points come from someone just posting something in Discord. Speaking of which, by the way, there's one for today, bit of an interesting one, a little bit later on. Just pops up and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll talk about that. Like it's just a rumor or something, and it turns out most of the time actually to be true. Like the JamYoung rumor, I hadn't heard about that, and someone's just fucking posting it in my Discord, and then it's like, oh, okay, we'll talk about that next podcast, and then a week later, it's like, yep, that actually happened.
The main place I always know to go for rumors of the Chinese scene is Dan King Street.
Yeah.
That guy, because he has like the segment or whatever where like his leaker, insider, who's always right basically, comes on.
Some
and
Chinese
like,
insider.
Like a blurred voice and like you can't see his face. It's like, it's like a robot, like Mr. Robot
it's
voice,
JamYoung.
whatever. Yeah. And he always has this leaker who comes on and says like this move. So I remember like when we were in Mongolia, and obviously we had like Lim Vision there. I was like, oh, Starry and G are going to Lim Vision, going to Tyloo. I remember like T-Town was like, no, they're not. And I was like, yeah, they are,
I remember
bro.
this actually.
Yeah. I was like,
you're like, I have a Chinese friend who translated it for me or some shit.
Yeah. I had a guy I went to university with who
it.
played FPL, like their version of FPL, the Perfect
5e,
World system.
5e play.
That's the one. Yeah. He's insane, and he played with all of these guys. The reason I didn't know this guy.
Yeah.
But like we had a mutual friend, and he messaged me. He was like, by the way, is that your voice? Is that you on Asia ECL? I was like, yeah, what the fuck? Like, and he was like, oh yeah, like, and I was like, why? I asked him. I was
That's
like,
funny, isn't it?
I only played Counter-Strike with him once. So I was like, mate, like, why are you watching Asia ECL? It's like midday in the UK. He's like, these are my mates. I was like, how the fuck do you know Lin Vision or whatever? He was like, I'm Chinese. I was like, what? He's called Luke.
Me howdy.
I was like, you are? Like, sick. All right, what's going on, man? But yeah, so like, he was telling me about obviously like the danking. Yeah, but yeah, that's what I mean. Like, you have to actually go through like, there's no way that I would know about.
It's nowhere in English. Apart from on Geographically Challenged.
Exactly. So there's no way that I would know about this if it wasn't for having a mate that I went to the same university as, that was a friend of a friend, who then ended up being friends with some of the like Lim Vision guys who played like 5e with him. And then he had been just at the time watching Dan King stream, was like, oh, have you heard this is happening?
Yeah,
and it's like, is it legit? And he was like, whenever it's on Dan King stream, it's normally pretty legit. Yeah. And this was like 4 months ahead. But then I also did ask Gum, so.
Yeah, well, that helps too. Gum, the coach of Lim Vision, by the way, for those that don't know.
He didn't admit it, but he got chuckled, and he was very obvious. I was like, oh, I heard.
Yeah.
Oh, because no, sorry. Was it? Oh yeah, G had left, and then Zaka had come back at that event. Was that right?
Starry was like, I don't know, I can't remember.
Starry was there. G wasn't.
Yeah, I think
and
G
then
went.
Zaka was playing. That was it, right?
Zaka was always in. It would have been flying.
Yeah, flying. Sorry, it was flying. Yeah. And then it was like, I remember, I was like, oh, I heard Starry's also going to Tyloo, and he was like. I was like, some shit like that. I was like, all right, okay. Like, but yeah, like I think you're right. Like the issue is, I guess, well, obviously in China, Twitter is not allowed. as with like most kind of like I guess social media that we're used to, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. So they have WeChat and they have
Weibo, Douyin,
yeah, exactly. All their kind of
Xiaohongshu is Instagram. They have a version of everything.
Yeah, exactly. But because of that, and also like I'm assuming we probably can't use them in.
No, I think you can. You just have to sign up for an account.
There you go.
Obviously, no one does because why would you?
Exactly. But that's the thing, because of that is obviously there's this breakdown in communication, and that's where having people to bridge the gap, coming back in full circle, like a person like Kei, I think is great. So for those who don't know, check out Kei, Kei, Mongolian
just
streamer.
Look up Kei Meta on YouTube.
Yeah, he is like
him. It's all in Mongolian though, so I don't know how valuable that'll be. But
if you say hello in chat, I'm sure you say hello back.
Oh, he does. Yeah, he does.
He speaks brilliant English and is like one of the nicest blokes ever. And also is so influential for the Mongolian scene. He's known these guys from the come up. He's been, I mean, he's been there since day one, like way before, same time as Mara type vibes. Yeah, exactly. Right. So he's been right.
He's got kids.
Yeah, exactly. Right from the beginning. And I mean, if ever you wanted to know stuff about the Mongolian scene, like even if he's like streaming shit, he's like the perfect guy to ask, right? He can tell you what's going on, how the health is, what the vibes are. So I think it's nice having people like that, and then obviously through him, you and Geographically Challenged, to then have the sort of translated to English version, I guess, in a way.
Yeah.
But we need that more regular, I think, is the issue, which is why people feel a real disconnect of Asia.
Right.
I think speaking to friends of mine, it's like, I even spoke to one of my friends, and he was sort of talking about how like he kind of wants to see the big teams make the top 4 and like not Mongols. And I was like, why not? Like, do you not find this Mongol story like kind of heartwarming? And he was like, yeah, but like, I just don't really know anything about them. Yeah. He's a more casual viewer. And I was like,
well, there's not much to know, to be fair. Like, they're still very early in their career. Like, they haven't built that legacy. But this is the thing. Like, in 5 years, you look back and you're like, fuck, we didn't know how good we had it back then when we were watching that. It's like I think the difference is though, like you look at like Senzu, for example. I think is incredible. Like he's been so good for this side. Obviously, no, like let's be real, not the level of Donk, right? But Donk came onto the scene and was like already like notorious before he became there, because I think it was like people were talking about them all the time. But because you don't really get that as much, like I mean, I'm sure in 5e and all these other platforms there is some animals kicking about there, right? That like I mean that's where Mercury, JamYoung.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. They were like animals picked up in pugs, right? And the thing is, we don't really see them. Like even like now in like EU, there's like this kid called Kaiosuke in Spirit Academy. He's already got this like massive aura around him, and I feel like that's where people find this real disconnect with the Asian scene, which is why they struggle to like sort of be like behind it in a way as a casual viewer. Where we're as like the sort of more niche and more hardcore. We're like, this is a fucking incredible story.
Yeah, you do need to be sort of in the community.
Yeah. But how do we fix that is the issue? Because I think
just keep doing shit like this. I think that's the thing. Like people just need to talk about it more, and then the results need to be there from the teams as well for people to be invested. But like already we're starting to see a bit of a change. Like people do care now about Mongolians.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
People are watching this show. Like every single podcast we do now is hitting 5K views easy, and some of them are going well above that. So that never happened 5 years ago.
Guys.
So people are interested. People are more interested than they used to be. But anyway, look, we've been going an hour and 20 minutes. Obviously. Probably about 50 minutes of that has been largely about the Mongols, but a lot of that was about the playoffs. I feel like we've kind of covered most of our opinions on what's going to happen in the playoffs, stuff like that. Is there anything else you want to touch on from the Elim stage? Na'Vi. Do you want to talk about Na'Vi at all? Or
I don't know if I'm going to get flack for talking about an EU team.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to, but it's just if you find anything interesting. Otherwise, there's a couple of other little random tidbits. We've probably got another 10 to 20 minutes left of like just random topics.
We don't have to go too detailed into it, but I definitely think
but if you want to have a shout
as
out,
a Counter-Strike fan, it is worth talking about Na'Vi in the sense of this is arguably the tournament favourites out before the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big talking point. I know people are here mainly for Asia Counter-Strike, but like that is a worthwhile topic because at some point Mongols are going to go to an event as a favourite.
Well, think about it this way, right? And I forgot to bring this up when we were talking about the Mongols. It does kind of tie into the Mongols. When we did the podcast last week, didn't we say Na'Vi?
I think I said
Na'Vi Vitality.
Yeah.
I had Na'Vi Vitality in my pick'ems.
They were my 3-0s, I'm pretty sure, Na'Vi Vitality.
When I did the pre-major one with Pilski and Bleh, and I said, who's going to win the major? We all sort of said, it's probably going to be Na'Vi. Like, Na'Vi's like the safe choice.
I would say probably like 75% of people will say that.
Exactly. So that's huge, first of all. But the other conversation point that's been going around a lot at the moment is that Na'Vi is like the only top team that wasn't built to make a change.
Yeah.
If you recall. Vitality's changes.
I don't think they are. Still.
Well, okay, whatever. There are rumors.
I don't know. I don't know. That's the argument you're going about Na'Vi.
About Vitality.
Sorry, yeah. No, I don't think Na'Vi are going to make a change.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying Na'Vi is the only team that is not
Yes,
was not
yes.
making changes. Vitality rumored to, G2 rumored to,
Yeah.
Mongolz rumored to, FaZe rumored to.
Not heroic, not like
Not heroic, not liquid. Liquid maybe.
I think Liquid was
but
always,
like,
it was always like, what ultimate do we get at this major? We got
yeah.
the good ones.
But
so far.
of the big teams, Vitality.
Spirit also definitely.
Yeah,
I
Vitality.
don't know if you mentioned Spirit, but
No, I
like
didn't.
Spirit are most definitely in the conversation.
Yeah,
in
so
this
Spirit,
change.
Vitality, Mongolz, FaZe. That's a lot of big names.
Everybody bar heroic, Mongolz, and Liquid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to
There's
tie that in with the
5 out of
Mongols,
the 8 teams,
the
yeah.
way I wanted to tie that into the Mongols is like Mongols kind of can't because they need to have Mongolian players.
Yeah, 'cause
they need to
who-
speak Mongolian. So unless one of those players would get poached
Yeah.
to an English-speaking team, which is maybe not as unrealistic as it sounds now with the results that they've been having. Like, can you imagine like a Xign or something? I'm pretty sure he speaks English.
No. But this is the funny thing that like I've been loving going to events now, and like I think this was one of them was at like Elisa. I had this, and I think I was telling other people the people at Challenger. So all the Mongols teams. All the Mongols players, speak English enough
Yeah.
to get through a conversation.
They could, yeah.
We spoke to all 5 of them at some point in time in Mongolia, where it was enough. Obviously, Techno
He's very shy.
Techno is the best English, but he's also the most confident.
I don't know if it's necessarily the best. Like, I mean,
He's
it's
the most
good,
confident in
but
it.
I think he's the most confident.
I think speaking, I had a brief conversation with Senzu, just kind of one-on-one
Yeah.
when grabbing a drink, and I was like, dude, like, your English is good, man. Like, why don't you speak? Like, everyone wants to hear from you. Like, obviously, like, for the longest time, he's been like the main man on this team, right? Putting up the big numbers. I was like, why don't you speak? Or like something like 9-10 as well, right? It's like, this is a guy with like 2.8k hours on a fucking major playoffs, right? So like, why is it always Techno? And then sort of what he was saying, he was kind of just like laughing about it. But what Senzu was saying was just like, he's the most confident in it. He like puts himself forward, right?
Yeah. It's actually a good career move for him, by the way. It builds his brand up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, regardless of how he plays, it is like, it's such a good thing to have. Like, he just, obviously, having somebody who is just that confident in yourself. But also, like, I think he's like super well spoken, super lovely kid as well. Like, it is quite, it's nice, heartwarming, right? So, but that's the thing. Like, they could, I'd be super surprised if it happened.
I think it's not going to happen. I'd be surprised if it happened now. But I think like 12 months, 18 months, if the results continue to go the way they are, for sure someone's on the fucking, on the radar.
Yes and no, though. The counter I have to this is why I think
this better be a good counter, man.
The counter why I think most top teams would actually not go for a Mongols player, and I think this is the blessing of the Mongols themselves, is because I think the thing that makes the and this is going full circle to the cringe, but I think there's actually a lot of cringe behind this, is like the power of friendship. It's the system. It's the synergies, the cohesion. You can't I think all these players are great, and I think they are top players, but I think the biggest risk that a top team would have is like, if I go and pick up 9-10 and make him my AWPer, or if I pick up Senzu and make him my star, or if I pick up Blitz and make him my IG, I mean, he's like at the moment one of tactically incredible, right? If I'm who's to know that him in his second language, not in his country, not his continent,
not with his friends,
not with his friends, in a completely foreign environment to him, who's to know that they are going to be comfortable and the same level? Like, obviously, you can say that for any player who plays internationally, but I think in particular for the Mongols, the beauty of them is that they're really young. Everyone's got to remember, we've got Mazzino's 16 still, or 17 now. I think it's 17, 19.
17, 18, 19.
Yeah, 17, 19, and then 22.
Senzu 18, and Blitz is, 22.
Blitz is 22, then 19, 18, 17, whatever, right? So
doesn't matter,
they're all kids, basically. Even Blitz as well, 22 is not old, right, by any means. They're all young, and I think that's probably the main thing where teams would be like, I don't know.
Here's actually a good counter argument to it. Ties in with what you're saying.
Sure.
Every time we've seen an Asia player taken out of Asia and brought into North America or whatever, hasn't really gone the way you would have. Like, you think Machine Gun originally, Bentet's the second generation of that. Machine Gun was the original generation, if you remember. Machine Gun went to Splice, I think. And he was the original guy.
He was playing with, he was the Mongolian guy playing with, he was playing with Crucial way back when.
Yeah, so he was in Splice, and
that was one of the most random teams.
It was just a fucking shit idea to begin with, but obviously it didn't work out.
Yeah.
I don't think Machine Gun was anywhere near as talented as these current day guys are.
Yeah.
For a start, but also it was just he just had a big name. You know what I mean? Like, he was a big name.
Yes.
Very very exciting player. Whatever, they just picked him up. But I think it's different these days than what it was back then. But Bentet as well. Like, Bentet, don't get me wrong. Like, he
had his good moments,
he
though.
did pretty well in some cases in those Gen G rosters and. whatever else there was.
I don't think Extreme was that bad.
No, it wasn't awful,
Yeah.
but like it wasn't like like he was like the GOAT of Asia. Like
Yes, exactly.
The GOAT.
I mean, he was the face of Asia.
The face of Asia for a very long
longest
time,
yeah.
before Mongols and all that. And so you'd have to be like a little bit scared that, let's say you took Senzu.
Yeah.
That he's like of that same caliber now. People are like, wow, fuck, Senzu's sick.
Yeah.
Do you just pull him out of his comfort zone and all of a sudden it's another Bentet?
Yeah, I mean,
and it's like he's not bad, but he's just like kind of mid.
That's also why, like, we've seen, for example, in the past, all of these super teams fail, right? Obviously the classic examples like the Colossus, the phase 1 that lost to Xign as well. All these super teams fail because it is like, you get a bunch of superstars, but they're not comfortable and they're not in an environment they're like, it doesn't work out. And we obviously see them kind of speak about it afterwards and be like, I regret going because I didn't realize how good I had it. The grass isn't always greener. And that's the issue with like Asenzu is like he could actually very much easy, or like any of these players could go to, an EU team or an American team or whatever, and it could end up being, super rough for them. And then there's like no coming back in a way.
Yeah.
It's tough to come back. So this is where like, I think the beauty of it, however, the counter to that in itself is like, the beauty of it is that it's great that it works because they're together.
Yep.
The only difference is it's actually beneficial for the Mongolian, but also the Asian scene to be seen as good exports, because then that, in its sense, sort of means that people put more eyes on the scene. It means that people invest into the scene, because if we see like a Senzu go, I don't know, for example, somewhere to EU, right? Or like a 9-10 go to North America. 9-10 North America, it would be great because he's better than every single AWPer in North America, hands down, for the last good amount of years. There hasn't been an AWPer. That's North America's big struggle. They don't have any AWPers, right? So he is better than the entirety of that scene. Not that it's going to happen, but for example, right? And let's say they go and be successful and they go and work, then people are going to be like, hey man, maybe like Asia's like a good place to invest in, and maybe I actually should be looking at like the Chinese scene and like, rather than like JamYoung going to Valorant, I bring him over to my team in this and the other. He speaks to English, and this is where like it's a beauty in itself. So that's like what I want. Like in a way, like I don't want the Mongols to break up, but it's good if we do get exports go from Asia abroad and work, because that's where people then be like, okay, this is where it's worthwhile. Like we've got kind of in a sense with the EU guys going over to America, right? Because they can just bolster up these teams, Susp, Fuzi, Ultimon, Liquid, yada yada, right? So it's worthwhile where now people focus a little bit more on the tier 2 of EU to look for these players, because they know they can play tier 1. And obviously we know there's so much talent in Asia that can play tier 1. It's just like
unlocking it,
opportunities. Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, with all that said and done, that's crazy how Na'Vi didn't qualify.
Yeah.
That's the big takeaway from that whole conversation.
The thing, I would say though, as my counter to them, it was a bad tournament. I think
it happens.
JL massively underperformed. I think Alexi's calls, especially that final map when they got eliminated, his calls looked actually kind of dreadful, which is rare, because like I'll happily admit, used to be an Alexi hater. I've been very much turned this year with this Na'Vi team. Turned on. Loving, exactly. What a man. Also, God mode banger.
No homo.
But
it's okay if you are though.
But what? Oh, right. All right. I thought you said no comment.
I'm basically just shit posting on my own podcast. Don't worry about it.
I thought you were saying no comment on the God mode song.
I said no homo.
That's a banger, mate, with Vercast. Actually a bit of a tune. But no. It all fell apart, but I think the whole team fell apart.
Yeah.
One thing that was quite funny was Wonderful tweeting saying like, I think that he was like shitposting Heroic, and he's like ready, like they said ready to beat. I think Heroic tweeted something like ready to beat Na'Vi, and then he said you lot are ready for the plane, and then like obviously ended up losing.
Yeah,
so
they're like,
hilarious.
Damn you are.
But I still think it doesn't discredit them from. I would say, okay, this is the big argument. Are they still team of the year?
I think if Vitality doesn't,
if Vitality win the major, Vitality is team of the year.
Yeah,
I think. Even if Spirit win the major, I don't think they are. No. Because of their inconsistencies.
Yep.
But also...
It's too up and down.
They're land dodging as well. Fucking go to Rio. No, I'm joking. Their travel schedules are pretty long. I can understand why they're...
Come to Sydney, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Stop land dodging. But I think it all comes down to whether Vitality win the major. If Vitality don't win the major, I think Na'Vi still probably, for me, take team of the year. Blade easily gets coach of the year.
For sure.
And also the beautiful thing about this Na'Vi roster now is that like... regardless of this result,
anyway,
Blade is still the GOAT. I think he's the greatest coach of all time.
Sure.
I think, especially now with how bad the Falcons.
I can get behind it. I can get behind it for sure.
I think probably it's safe to make the argument of Alexi being IGL of the year for this year, because I think the only counter is Apex, arguably.
Yeah.
Depending on how the result goes, how the major goes, right? But I still think Alexi's done, 4 big trophies they won this year, so fair enough.
Yeah.
So it is a big shot.
Against the expectations as well. Like initially people were like, oh, this Navi team's like...
Well, everyone thought they were going to be shit.
Not
And I was also there.
Yeah,
I also didn't think it was... I really didn't... The one guy that I always backed in that Navi team was actually always wonderful, because I saw him in Sprout and he was just insane. I saw him all the way back on a team called Trasco in like tier 5.
Yeah.
And he was insane. It is a big miss. I think... Yeah. It doesn't really matter for the sake of the major, thank God. Like, it's not like a repeat of like the Blast Paris where like we're missing a lot of big teams. Thankfully, we've got the vast majority of big teams. It's just, it would be nice to have Na'Vi there as like, the sort of reigning champs able to kind of prove what their worth is, right? That it'd be nice for the storylines, be like, but at the same time, I think Heroic deserved it. I think they played better, and I think they've faced the absolute gauntlet of teams to get here. So, credit to them. So it's a miss. But at the same time, it works in our agenda because it means that Mongolz have a technically easier run.
Yeah.
I say technically, but just because they seem to be Heroic's kryptonite. So
no bias, of course. And I think just to quickly wrap it up, I mean, the rest of the results more or less were not a big surprise. I mean, Furia, MIBR, Pain, 3D Max, Game Legion, Wildcard, Big, did not expect them to make it through necessarily. Vitality, Mongolz, G2, Spirit, Mouse, Heroic, FaZe, we called.
Yep.
And the only one that we kind of got wrong was Liquid. We didn't have Liquid when we had that conversation. Obviously,
who
Navi missed out. Liquid got that slot in
yes,
top 8, if that makes sense. Because remember we said, like, of the teams that made it through from the opening stage, who could reliably beat out any of those teams that got
and we basically
straight into
the big hitters.
All the big hitters are going to go
there.
through. Which the only one that actually missed out was Navi.
Yeah.
And obviously we had 3D Max going out for Mongolz in our like little world. So that one was obvious, I think, for most people. I actually think, just on the topic of those pick'ems, I actually think the second stage, obviously the elimination stage, was just fucking so easy.
So easy.
Super easy compared to the opening stage.
6 or 7.
I think I got 6.
I got one of my 03s wrong. I think I put 3D Max 03. They went 1-3.
Yeah, I didn't have Big. I had Wildcard, Game Legion, and they ended up playing each other 0-3. But I actually think if Wildcard and Game Legion didn't play each other, I reckon they both go 0-3 there. But anyway, it doesn't really matter.
Exactly. And like, I had Na'Vi in my 3-0.
Navi Vitality.
Yeah, I had Na'Vi Vitality in 3-0. So I did pretty well. I failed the first stage, which was way harder. I think
it's so much harder for sure.
I think the real slip up actually going to be this playoffs, because I think you
could make any number of combinations.
You make a strong argument essentially for
anything.
Basically, every team. I would actually say, as weird as it is to say, I'd say every team bar FaZe is actually probably the one I would actually say. The reason why I actually want to say you can make a bit of an argument is if you're A, NA bias, and B, you can just be like, these guys are just like silently like overperforming.
Are they, bro? Like,
a 3-1's not bad though.
Yeah, but who did they play?
Game
Legion?
Yeah, true.
Furia?
True.
MIBR. And don't get me wrong, I rate MIBR.
And Furia
to an extent.
Game Legion, who cares?
But I don't think, like, you look at that, I don't think that's as impressive as
Heroic's the most impressive, I think.
Mongolz, obviously, G2, Mouse, Heroic. Yeah, I mean, who did Spirit play? They beat Na'Vi, they beat Heroic, so there's that. I mean, Mouse has to play... Mouse lost to Mongolz FaZe. They beat... Mouse wasn't super impressive either. They beat Pain, 3D Max, MIBR.
Yeah.
But yeah, Heroic, like you say, like FaZe lost to Mongolz, lost to Spirit, beat Na'Vi, beat Big.
Yeah. They faced some hitters.
So you know, like...
Okay, yeah.
Okay. I just don't think... The thing is, I just don't think... And also in the last stage as well, I don't think Liquid faced the craziest of opponents to get through there either.
Yeah, it's
that was kind of my thing.
I think with Liquid, it's just more like, you know, if you had a bit of NA Hopium, you can maybe make an argument for it.
Yeah.
The other one I don't think has a chance, if I'm being honest, the only one is, even though I'm kind of fighting my own self to say this, is actually FaZe.
Yeah.
Just because, like, I've always feel like I learned to be like, don't discount FaZe, don't discredit them.
Right.
But actually, I think unfortunately, in terms of winning accolades and winning trophies, you can actually discount FaZe at the moment. You know, Brokey's had one of it. I think I saw it was something like, I don't know if it included the last game or not, but this is like Brokey's joint worst tournament of all time since joining FaZe.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
That might not include the last game, but I remember seeing it on Twitter. I mean, like Statsmeister posted it. Okay. It was like his joint worst game of all time, or joint worst tournament of all time. and then you know. It is a team for me. Carrigan's always like inevitable sort of thing, but like I just don't see this team being a trophy-winning team at the moment.
I don't see it either. But
if they were to do it, it would have to be the most insane
sure.
180 ever. Where like Brokey becomes insane again.
Yeah,
I think Rops has looked better than he did in his slump, but it's still not like super convincing. Rain has his moments where you're like, fucking hell, mate, like Jesus. And then like obviously some of the calls from Carrigan, I think he's still one of the greatest IGLs of all time. If not the greatest, but it's still like sometimes you see some of the plays doing, and you're like, what is going on here? So I think that's the only issue that I have is like those two is like I think you can make strong arguments like Liquid and FaZe. I don't think I've chance. But every other team, I think you can make an argument.
Yep.
Mals have won trophies, can win
Yep.
trophies, definitely can count them out. That top side of the bracket is doable. Spirit, you can't.
Yep. X Factor team.
Alone
sure.
is, but then also the thing is like I think like because Donk's so good, people always just forget about Shiro, and he was still
100%,
an incredible AWPer. I think Heroic has looked insanely good. Tessus and Shush alone are just
Underrated.
superstars.
Yeah.
Dexter is a top caliber tier 1 AWPer. Kicksan, as much as people doubted him, I always knew back on the day, man, this guy is a good caller and he can call at a top level. Vitality, arguably the favourites, even despite all the like potential roster shuffles that are on the cards there. If that is the case, maybe a bit of a last hurrah, a last dance as well for this team. G2, X Factor,
what
Odyssey,
needs to be
Nico,
said.
the best AWPer in the world right now, and
Definitely.
one of the best riflers in the world right now. Not the best, obviously Donk being the best. I also think as well, the interesting thing, if we're going to just keep sort of EU for a brief moment, who do you think is number one now? Or like, okay.
That's a hard question.
Yeah. Because I personally don't think, I don't think Zyru's in the conversation anymore. Unless he was
you mean player?
Yeah, best player, yeah. But who wins Heritage TV number
Modesty.
one?
Modesty's always been for me.
Yeah, okay. So that's what I lean as well. However, the argument that people have for Donk, which I think is absolutely fair enough, is the rating differential.
I mean, he's a rifler, first of all.
Yeah, but average rating to like the rest of his team is like insane.
Sure.
And like also when you just look at his ratings, obviously Modesty has insane ratings as well. But like that's the argument that people make, is that like, you know, like he is the number one player on like not a number one team, where like Monacy's a number one player on a number one team. So that's like the sort of argument.
Yeah.
I'm Monacy. I think he's number one. I think he should win Player of the Year. Like what he's done this year with G2 is like incredible. But
for sure,
I do wonder whether like. I mean, this major could even decide. I mean, like in a weird way, if like Vitality win it, Zyru could just shoot back up to the number one spot and be like, you know, major trophies under his belt, bang bang.
I wasn't actually going to bring this up because I mean we're going long basically, but since we're on the topic, I have wondered a little bit: is this the first year we get an Asian player inside the top 20?
Senzu should.
Mongolz, can any Mongolz player make the top 20?
I would.
Like maybe 15 to 20 somewhere.
I reckon this playoffs will be
Senzu 9-10.
a big indicator. I think Senzu has a really good shot. I think 9-10 might just miss out on the sense that like he's in a couple of tournaments which have been a little bit rough. But you know, it's about consistency. But like Senzu is always a heater, right? So I think
I don't want to spend too long on it, but I like just to get your quick thoughts. Like it seems like possibly.
I genuinely, I mean, I feel like obviously I think that the playoffs will be a big indicator, but I think there's a very, I mean, obviously. I can't even really picture it. I have to like sit down and look at the names and stuff. But like, it's tough to go like
just from a gut feeling.
Who is 10 to 20? I think Senzu could make it. I don't think any of the rest would, but I think Senzu could sneak into like an 18th or a 19th kind of vibe.
Yeah, I think that's a conversation point for like an episode after the major. You know what I mean? Like when we.
Also, if he does, by the way, the knock-on effect could be massive. So it'd be sick.
Yeah, that's what I think. I just have it in my notes here as a conversation point for one of the future episodes, maybe. But worth sort of touching on there. I think that'll be a conversation that once this major's over, you know, when I'm back in Oz and I've got Pilski and Bleh on, and you know, we're not maybe there's a quiet sort of week or something like that. We can maybe just touch on that because I think it could be interesting. But anyway, we'll see. Look, I think we've talked enough about the major. If people are still sticking around. Fucking credit to you. Just to quickly round out the show, I guess Asia news of the week. Obviously, Xign retiring.
He's doing military service.
He's going to military service. So
good on your soldier, fair play.
Yeah, this has been a talking point for like probably the last 2 years.
Yeah,
it's been like, when is Xign going to do military service? Because it felt like it was on for a little while.
What's the age limit? Like,
I actually don't know.
I don't actually know.
But
is that maybe like by 25?
25 it might be. Yeah. You do have to do it at some point.
Seems to be a number that is in my head, but I'm not really sure.
I actually don't know how old he is, but he's hanging up the mouse. I don't know based on his tweet that he was like, I'm done. Yeah. But in my experience, watching these players from these regions that do have military service, Singapore's being another one.
Yeah.
They never come back the same.
No.
They
no,
go
no
away
way.
for 12 months or 24 months and they never come back the same. Like Splashkey, Impression, Benkai.
Oh, Impression.
Maybe not so much Impression, but Splashkey, Benkai in particular were like two
Yeah.
real standout players for that Boot Dreamscape roster back in the day.
Yeah.
Went to do military service, came back, were never really the same as what they were.
Yeah.
Although Benkai had a great career in Valorant. Shout out to Benkai.
Yeah.
Fuck you for dogging us. Love you.
Real talk though, just on that note, Xign should have gone to Valorant.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, he will probably think about that a lot in the
Maybe.
future, but like that in a monetary sense.
I think he just loves CS, man. Like I think that's what it is.
Which is we
fucking
spoke about this here on day one. We
Yeah.
were saying like, he stuck around for the love of the game, while the rest of the scene went to Valorant for the bag. And fair play, they made a bag. I mean, Valorant's the APAC stuff's in Korea, right? Yeah. So he's in the right place for it, but unfortunate. But either way, love of the game, which is why we love him.
Yeah.
Right?
What a
Stuck
champ.
around,
What a champ.
What a champ. Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like greatest of all time career CS players, or at least in terms of global offensive, I think he's definitely up there.
Yeah.
Global offensive onwards. For me, Xign, Zeta, like probably the
Zeta,
two.
yeah.
You remember Zeta?
Yeah.
He went to Valorant too, but he was amazing. I think just the fact that Xign stuck around.
Yep.
But the thing is, like, problem for Xign is like he didn't really do anything beyond being in those Korean teams. So that's a bit of a knock on him. But I guess there's not a huge amount of competition when it comes to Korea anyway at this point anymore. So he's up there probably in the top 5 easy. Shout out to Xign. Thought it was worth a mention. And
Good luck on the service, kid.
Look, I hope he comes back, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Good luck. Good luck, Xign. And the other piece of news, I specifically didn't tell you this one before we started because I wanted to get your live reaction.
Oh God.
This one is a rumor, but posted in my Discord just like an hour ago.
All right.
Apparently, JamYoung failed his tryout for Valorant. And the rumor is that he's going to go to Rare Atom.
What? Why did you go back to Tai Lu?
Because apparently he can't go back to Thailand. I don't know. This is just a rumor, and it literally is those two sentences. Basically, he failed his tryout in Valorant. He can't go back to Thailand. Rumored to go to Rare Atom. I had to even then clarify: are we talking Rare Atom CS or Rare Atom Valorant?
Oh yeah, because they have a good Valorant.
And there seems to be no clarification on that. I ran this by Pilski and Bleh. Pilski reckons because he's Mr. Valorant.
Yeah.
He reckons there's a pretty good chance that means Valorant. That he would fit into the Rare Atom Valorant system a little better than he would in the Tyloo Valorant system. Also, that Rare Atom Valorant has picked up a lot of ex-CS players in the past. I can't name them. I don't have them off the top of my head, but he said a couple of names. Might have been Viva and Bottle. But anyway, doesn't really matter. But I was positing, what if that means Rare Atom CS? I could see. Like, I could unironically kind of see that. I think in that case...
I don't know if I like it, though.
I don't really want to see a change to Rare Atom CS. Like, I think they're doing all right now.
Sure.
I definitely think you can't remove Child King Lee Hung. They're safe.
No.
Kaze safe being the AWPer.
Yep.
Which means it's either Summer or somebody.
Eesh.
Summer being the IGL.
Yeah.
Probably means somebody's got to go.
I mean, unless they want him to call. But...
Unless they want JamYoung to call, which wasn't exactly the greatest of experiments in Tyloo from what we've seen. So
I'm just looking at this Valorant team. I already just don't recognize any of these people.
Read them
out. Okay. Here's the active team. I was looking at previous. The active team currently is Guran.
No.
Midnight.
No.
Ueo.
No.
ZHE. G.
No.
And Satoshi.
Okay.
That rings a bell, but I can't remember where from.
No. That's the name of a whiskey.
Oh, right.
Or
and then
Bitcoin.
before that,
Or
none
crypto.
of the... I'm looking at like the previous people. Martin rings a bell?
Martin, I think. Yeah.
You ever one?
Yeah.
That rings a bell.
He might have been on eHome or something.
Viva.
Viva's CS. Yeah.
And then... No, Yi Hao. I'm not too sure.
No, not sure.
Anyway, yeah. So, first of all, leaving CS... Okay, so what I was saying, for JamYoung's defense, right?
Sure.
I understand why anybody who's not the Mongolz, if opportunity arose to join a partnered Valorant team, would take it.
Yeah.
That is an insane upgrade in terms of the bag.
Yeah, but it seems
right?
like the implication is that was not the case. It was a tryout.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Which is like,
so
what?
My first instinct is one of two things. So if he A is leaving for the bag, right? Obviously, to fumble it at step one, when you're in the org and the org are like, nah, mate, I actually don't think it's even worth, because I'm assuming you went from Tyloo CS to Tyloo Valorant, right? That was the whole thing?
Well, I don't think that he ever was like confirmed to be going to a specific Valorant team. I don't think that there was ever
Oh, he was just trialing.
He was just The rumor was he's leaving CS
Oh, I thought
and going to Val, but it wasn't where, it wasn't when, it wasn't who for, or like, was it a tryout? Was he even just supposed to be added to a team? Don't know. But now what's coming out here is that it was maybe a tryout.
I assumed he was just going from Tyloo CS to Tyloo Valorant.
Yeah, right.
So he just always, under the same contract, they just changed the word Counter to Valorant, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then it's like, that sort of made sense. It's like a lateral move inside of the organization, right? But if you're like, as any of us, not us, but as any person who works a 9 to 5, you very rarely leave your job without having another one lined up. So
that's wise.
If you're leaving CS without any guarantee, that is insane. So if he's leaving to go to, if he just wants to go to Valorant for, even if it's, it could be the case he actually enjoys the game, which is fair enough. Like, whatever, right? He enjoys the game. And I can sort of understand in a sense, like CS has not been the kindest to the Chinese region in the sense of, especially because when you see how well the rest of your region's doing in Valorant, the money they're making, how deep, like honestly not from the same region, but obviously from APAC, but like when you see like those Paper X guys who are like world famous. Like, I wasn't even following Valorant and I couldn't get the Paper X guys off my feet.
They were all CS players.
Yeah,
originally.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like the original Paper X team was a CS team, moved over to Valorant.
That's what I mean, right? I actually remember someone tweeting about it and being like, I can understand fully why all these guys leave
They were
CS.
fucking nobodies in CS, bro.
Exactly.
They kept going to those like IEM events, like IEM Sydney and Cologne or whatever, and they would just get dead last every time. Did not win a series.
What were they, I remember they were in CS, but I remember being told they were in CS, but what were they called?
Boot. That's Boot Dreamscape.
Oh!
So that was like the Splashy Impression, Bulbasaur, Benkai, that roster, but it was what that was when they left, which was, if I remember off the top of my head right, it was Alex, Benkai, Tommy, Forsaken, Mind Freak?
Not the other Forsaken.
Not the other Forsaken. The extra brother Forsaken.
Yeah, he's really good, actually.
Which when he was starting to come into CS, everyone was like, holy shit, this is going to be sick. He's like the next kid. But obviously, they went, like 6 months later, went over to Val.
I can like, exactly. And this is the reason why, like, I can fully understand why players like JamYoung go to, like, want to go to Valorant, because they see people in Valorant who were 10 times worse than he was at Counter-Strike, being
succeeding
global superstars in that game, which is still ultimately an FPS game. Obviously, there's a lot more to it. Like, as anyone who's played Valorant, there's a fucking lot going on, right? But, the fundamentals are very similar to Counter-Strike. It's an FPS game, right? So I think I can understand why he sort of wants to go, especially because, I mean, he's been grafting, right? And it's just not been working in the sense of, like, he's not, I think, where he wants to be, or not where I think he was touted to be. Is probably the main thing. Yeah. So I can sort of understand why he wants to go to Valorant. However, it is kind of hilarious failing the trial, because, like...
Yeah.
That
again, it's a rumor. I don't want to get anyone too excited.
Yeah, true. But I just
think it's funny.
I can understand it from a monetary standpoint why he wants to leave, right? Because if you make it in Valorant, you are making way more money than if you're in CS. For the average APAC team, bar Mongolz, of course. Yeah. I'm sure probably the wages entirely was probably pretty decent, but like nowhere near the money you can get in Valorant with the partnership and the prize money and the what they call it, the bundles they sell in the game, and they all get cuts of it, yada yada, right? So there is
don't play it, shit game. Yeah,
guaranteed money. So I can understand why all these people want to leave, because they see, like, even like as a good example from EU is like Boaster, who's like the face of Valorant. Like, I wasn't around in the UK scene when he was there, but like from my understanding, he was just like an advanced.
He was just a dude.
He was just like a UK advanced CS player. I think he played MDL for a little bit. Yep. I mean, hey, he probably wasn't bad, but like, I think the general gist of what I've been told, again, this is years before I joined into UK CS. This is, don't shoot the messenger type vibe. Apparently, he was basically just never going to make it. Right. Essentially, he's never going to make it in CS at the very least. I think that's also very much where I feel your pain with the Asian scene and the UK scene. The UK scene, we have so much talent, and none of us make it for a multitude of reasons. But there's a lot of talent that comes through that don't end up making it, because of our rep in a way.
Fair.
And I think for Boaster, it was like he was pretty good, but I don't think he was ever going to be tier 1. I think it's kind of the general gist of what I got.
Yeah.
But he is now the face of Valorant, right? So I can understand why people want to leave in that sense. So. But if it's rare atom CS, coming back to the most important thing, if it's rare atom CS, that is spicy. It's an upgrade as well.
On paper.
I would argue in the sense of as well, an upgrade in terms of the ceiling, the potential, right? Because for me, JamYoung is like, as much as like I think people still argue about it, like I still think JamYoung is that guy. I still think he's got it. I still think you see flashes of it. I think obviously he probably lost. I mean, it makes a lot of sense now with him leaving. It felt like he lost a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
He lost a lot of like what made JamYoung so good, which is like he would like join into the server and be like, I am the best here.
Right.
And I'm going to prove it and destroy you. And I feel like for the last 6 months, we didn't really see that.
This might be a little bit controversial. I think actually it might be quite controversial. But I think you could definitely be a really talented individual, and there's no doubt about that JamYoung was that. But it's like when we talk about him as being like that future of Chinese CS type player, it's like maybe he never was. Maybe he never was going to be that, because ultimately, what did he actually achieve in CS? You know what I mean? Like when you think about it, it's like you can be so hyped up, but like if you just ultimately do not achieve, it doesn't matter how good individually you are, how good you look, what the eye test looks like.
Absolutely.
Maybe something about you just you don't have it, whatever it is. Like it's just this X factor type thing, which the Mongolz apparently have. Maybe JamYoung just didn't have it.
This is my counter with JamYoung. JamYoung had one thing, sort of basically, and this is not even really his fault, right? But he had like one thing working against him, which I think is like a stronger force than his individual ability and his ceiling and all the rest.
Say Advent.
And he had to play under Advent.
No, I knew it.
That will kill you.
No.
If you're playing under Advent, you're instantly...
I can't believe it.
You're instantly going to be worse.
You've really gone there. You saved this for the end of the fucking
that
final
will
podcast.
Pull down
this guy.
Any person. Put Modesty on the Advent. See what happens. I'm telling you.
Best player in the world. He'll be guaranteed.
Modesty on the Advent's put up a 0.9 rating.
People will forget Zywoo. People will forget Donk.
No. Modesty under Zywoo. Modesty under Advent is putting up a 0.9 rating.
I need someone to write me a Modesty X Advent fanfic.
Modesty
put it in my
Advent.
Discord.
Put Donk as a star rifler and Advent system, and that's the example. Donk. Put Donk on the Advent system, and he's fucking dropping a 0.9 rating, and he's not making out a pro.
Advent will say, "Don't you worry about this one, mate. I'm the entry fragger now."
Yeah, exactly. Donk he'll be like, Donk, mate, you sit back and lurk, fella. You just we're playing Inferno. You go chill in second mid apps, right? I'm gonna hit banana.
Yep.
And Donk's like, you sure, mate? Like, I reckon I'll be all right here. He's like, no, mate.
Donk, flash me in.
Yeah. Donk, just go and hold the push of second mid, just in case they flank me while I'm working banana. So that's my argument. But I generally thought for years, I actually thought, in a more serious tone, I actually thought it was gonna be like we were gonna get to this, especially this was like during COVID. I think it was like towards the end of COVID when we started having a few events. Yeah. But I remember when LimVision like fucked G2.
Right. That Starry Eclipse.
Exactly. The Starry Ace on Vertical, yada, right? I thought it was like, this is it. We're going to get a good head-to-head of two insanely good Chinese riflers who are going to like really propel this scene and actually like, you know, maybe like not be like a consistently good team. I just thought there was going to be like a scary team who could scalp a couple of big names, right?
Yeah.
And I think LimVision always just looked meh for me. You know, they had obviously their own issues, but I always thought it was like, I was always saying, like, I'm waiting for the super team. I'm waiting for, like, the accumulation of a JamYoung and a Starry in the same team. And then the second we get that, boom, they fucking insta. Like,
I know, that's the tragedy of it.
It's so annoying. I wish we had got, like, even if Starry had just given it, like, 6 more months.
Another 6 months.
Yeah, like, you know, how long was he even there? Like, 4 months in that super team? Like, maybe even not
even
that.
JamYoung, not sorry.
No, but, like, how long was that super team together?
Tyler?
Like, yeah.
Yeah, maybe 3 months.
Yeah, and like what?
3-4 months.
They barely played anything.
Well, actually, longer than that. But the problem was they didn't get to play with their core for such a long time because Rosselok's in ECL and this and that.
Yeah,
and they
Starry
were with,
was like stuck in LimVision for ages.
LimVision, and they were playing with.
And then G was like not
Cami
playing
and this and
basically
that.
for
so
ages.
we really only actually genuinely probably saw like 2 or 3 tournaments where they played as a core. One of which was the EPL qualifier most recently. That was like the last thing we saw JamYoung in, and they won that.
Exactly.
So
and that was on LAN as well, right? They had like the top 4 went to LAN. So this is the annoying thing. It's like, you know, like for me, like I can't think, like it can't be. I don't know if money is strong enough of an incentive to be like a guy who's in this super team, which is like everybody getting hyped. I'm assuming probably the org were going ballistic, be like, "Oh my god, we've got this
finally."
And then exactly,
after
finally,
fucking
right?
Years of failure, Tyler.
After
I don't know what they were cooking half the time.
Shittest teams.
This fucking score danking fucking roster. Was it
Yeah.
score dank? I can't even remember, but
Just
it was just shit.
Just piles of wank left, right, and center, and being led by Advent. And then I hate to kind of like down the guy, but obviously Kaze's last tenure was pretty rough. He was struggling for quite a bit, but the whole team were.
Looks a lot better under Rao.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like he's got his mojo back. He's happy again.
Yeah,
He looks smiley, which is what we're going to see.
Yeah.
But the thing with this team is like you've just won an ECL to a Pro League qualifier. You've had barely any time to work together, but in the small time you've had to work together, you've actually done something. So it's like, hey, this looks good.
Yeah.
We're winning, which makes Counter-Strike generally enjoyable as a pro player. We've now got a massive tournament lined up next year. With that lined up, that probably means we get invites as well. I mean, Tyler, who's still ranking, was probably going to be okay in terms of wildcard invites or regional invites as well. So it's all of that. And also, like, the scene as a whole sort of feels like it's opening up a little bit next year. Obviously, there's the argument about it, but, like, for a top Asian team as they are more or less going to be getting invites, or they should be getting invites, at least in some vein, like, because of regional stuff. So it can't be, I don't think money is a big enough incentive, because he's seeing all of these, unless he doesn't back himself, but he sees all these big ticket tournaments with big prize pools. That's where I feel like it actually has to be that he doesn't enjoy the game anymore.
Maybe. I just think missing the major really hurt. I think missing the major is just a killer for these Chinese teams.
Yeah.
Especially the way it happened.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the way it happened more than obviously they should have been there of Elimvision.
Yep.
In
the RMR.
In the RMR. Like, there's no, Elimvision should not have been ranked above them. Like, there's no two ways. Because, you hate to say it, but it was a complete waste of a spot.
Oh, for sure.
So that's one of the annoying things. I think that's brutal. But that's where, like, if you are a person who enjoys the game and whatever, that's where you can be like, okay, we've been hard done by here. That won't happen again next major cycle, because it can't, because we are just better than Envision. They're like basically a dead team at this point.
I mean, I didn't see it coming.
That's where for me, I think he fell out of love with the game.
Yeah, maybe.
There's nothing you can do. I feel like, obviously money is probably an indicator or a factor, an incentive where he's like, okay, shit, there's, all these ex-pros doing really well here. I think I can make the bag. But I don't think you leave for solely the bag if you've got big opportunities lined up for the next year. So that's where I feel like it's got to be like, I'm enjoying Valorant more, and CS has been rough.
Well, we'll see. I mean, there could be absolutely nothing to that rumor. We've talked for 20 minutes about JamYoung for no reason, but hey, whatever. It's fun.
But why can't he come back to...
I don't know.
To Tally?
Maybe they're fucking pissed off with him.
Because who's replacing him again? The guy who's come back?
ZDR.
ZDR, yeah.
Is the rumor.
Yeah, because he's called in the past. Right? Is that
no, I don't know. I don't even know who's called. I actually don't know who's calling on Tyler at this point. I think it's Mosey, but I don't believe ZDR's ever been a caller for them, no. Because I think in that interim period, I think in that interim period it was probably like a combination of JamYoung and Cammy doing it.
Yeah.
While Advent was like departing the roster and whatever, but who really knows at this point?
Damn. But
anyway, we'll find out next year, I guess. There's not really much sense talking about Tyler at this point until we get more information on that whole situation.
Okay, though, just before we move off from that, I will just say one thing.
Breaking news.
No, sadly not. If you are the GM of Tyloo and you have to pick one player to replace JamYoung, not ZDR, I don't think he's like
Westmelon.
Is that your go-to, you say?
I actually think it's Westmelon Zaka, if I can get Westmelon Zaka.
So minus who?
Minus JamYoung, I guess. And honestly, probably minus G.
I don't mind G.
I don't mind G either, but I just think Zach is fucking sick.
Zaka is sick, though. I do think, especially recently.
The thing is, like, if we're going to take Westmelon, we might as well take Zaka as well, because that Vision team's dead at that point. Like, once Westmelon goes, there's no other IGL.
I wonder the buyouts like that as well.
Oh, probably insane.
Insane.
But if in this hypothetical world, we're getting whoever we want.
Yeah.
I just think you just need an IGL. Like, I actually just think in that team, you just need an IGL that is an IGL, not someone that's forced to IGL. And can also put up some
numbers as well.
And, Westmelon's a bit of a frag in IGL when he's on, so I think that'd be a good fit, but who knows? Like, I don't know what the rivalry is like between that team, how they get to, mesh together. Who knows?
They got Starry and G, so it can't be that bad.
It's true. But then, like, Westmelon, maybe, like, you betrayed me, whatever, this and that. Fucking who knows?
Yeah.
But hey, Cadian's done what he did, so.
Yeah, but not very successfully.
Well, yeah. Just saying, don't get back with the people who betray you.
Yeah, exactly.
Learn that one.
Lesson learned. Lesson from us.
Look, we're at about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Longest podcast in a while. I think we should wrap it up. It's midnight. This is more than likely the last podcast we will do.
Probably.
But we are
I
here
don't
for
think we'll
another
have time.
We're here for another week, so you never know.
True.
We'll see. But
True.
if you've enjoyed Nao on the podcast, drop a comment, follow him on Twitter, do all those things.
You know.
Make sure you check out his YouTube channel as well, doing the vlog.
Yes, sir.
For this event. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. It's always good to talk about Counter-Strike, especially Asian Counter-Strike.
And hopefully we'll get the chance to do it again next year at some kind of event. Who knows where we may end up. But if we end up in the same place, we'll do it.
Do another event, Mester. Bring us back.
Hell yeah.
Bring us back. Mongolz was cool.
There you go. All right. Thank you guys for watching. Especially if you made it all the way to 2 hours. Much appreciate. You're the goat. Shout outs. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Do all those things. It actually does help. Everyone says that, but it is true.
It's algorithm based. So
YouTubers know.
Yeah.
Buymeacoffee.com/Elfishguy as well. Big motivation if we get some money for it. So love to see it. See you next time. Peace. Hey guys, just at the end of this video, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Xign, who is my first supporter on buymeacoffee.com. If you'd also like to support me financially or any of my content, make sure to check out the link. It is in the description box below.